Hi there. It's been a few weeks. It's been a great number of ordeals since the last time I spoke with you all, which I believe I recorded on April 30th, maybe 29th. I don't know. It's all a blur. It is now May 22nd. I have been camping out in Japan in a series of business hotels for over 3 weeks now, which is concerning. This is a podcast. Hello, hi. My name is Justin, and the title of the podcast is Breaking Change. Every episode, something's got to break. I am very broken, for example, but there's got to be something novel about this release relative to all the previous ones. That's because we need a new major version to be cut. This is version 37 of the program, and its release title is Whose Bone Is This? Which will make sense if I remember to tell you what that's all about. In fact, I'm going to make a note right now. Whose bone is that? There you go. Because I just realized I was at risk of titling it as such and not actually following through. It's been a long fucking few weeks. Cut me some slack, please. All right, well, I've got a new mobile recording studio set up. I've got an iPhone 16 Pro with a MagSafe, is that Belkin? Yeah, Belkin Clippy-Doo on top of a 14-inch MacBook Pro, connected via a USB 3.1 Gen 2 cable that I just had to buy because the USB 3.1 cable that I bought last night apparently didn't allow data over it, only charging. And then on the other hand, on the other side of the equation over here, I've got a second cable, and that's connected to a DJI mic mini setup, little charging case there, and that's what's connected here. And so the audio quality will be worse than you are accustomed to because this is coming from the Breaking Change East studios and not my normal little Orlando habitat. I don't know if I've talked too much about this, but I actually get nervous before every recording. Not as nervous as I used to get before going on stage and giving a conference presentation. But I still get like a little bit of a pump of adrenaline right before I go on air. Even though it's not really on air, both because it's not traveling wirelessly just yet, but also because this is a recording that I have an opportunity to edit. I could get rid of all the swear words like fuck and shit and if I wanted to. Like that last one probably shouldn't have said. But that's what the E rating is for. Maybe I'll bleep it out. Maybe that'll be my first bleep and you'll all just have to wonder. But also, am I too lazy? Making a note to maybe bleep that one out. Maybe bleep that one out. All right, we're cruising. So anyway, I'm fresh out of adrenaline, unfortunately, already, because I woke up at 1 a.m. to a Ring burglary alarm phone call. I was sleeping in this bed over there in this aforementioned business hotel, and I had an AirPod in my ear because of a sickness that I have. It's easier for me to fall asleep with a podcast of random people talking. Maybe that's you right now. Maybe you are attempting to sleep. And I should have avoided saying that third swear word that I'd mentioned earlier. Maybe it jolted you awake and you're like, that word is not okay, Justin. Anywho, I was in bed with an AirPod in my ear because I'd been listening to a podcast because I'd been had on a sleep timer for 15 minutes, fell asleep. Some number of hours later, with the AirPods still in my ear, I started, the phone ringing sound woke me up, and I'm asleep. If you're asleep, you don't know you just know a jingle is happening, and you're like, whoa, I did not mean to start playing any music, and so you tap it, right, to like pause the fucking music, but now you've just answered the phone, and so now you've got a second problem, which is there's a lady in your head. And she's like, hello, this is whatever. And I was like, whoa, slow down. She said, this is Ring home monitoring, and a burglary alarm was just detected in your residence. Would you like me to dispatch the police? And I said, well, I don't know. Can you hold on a minute? And then I got my phone out and I was looking at we have got 2 cameras on the outside of the house. And I was like, can you tell me anything else? Because like I see my pool guys parked out front, but like I don't know what it doesn't look like anything happened. And she asked for my safety word, which is coincidentally because people struggle to have too many passwords and PIN codes in their head. My sex safety word and my ring alarm safety word are actually the same word, which is separately, now that I think about it, like kind of fun. Some number of like home monitoring alarm people now, like if they ever do have sex with me, they'll be like, whoa, hey, wait a second there. That sounds familiar, that word. So anyway, if you listen to version 36 of the program, you might know that I'm here ostensibly to buy a condominium, which in Japanese is referred to as a manshon, as a second home for Becky and I, so that we can split time between Japan and America, which has been a dream of mine my entire adult life, and we're this close to pulling it off. But nothing makes me more excited about owning 2 homes than waking up in the middle of the night wondering, is my house burning down? Is it being actively burgled while I'm on the other side of the planet? As it is, I'm stressed out about things like, oh, the front door lock's battery is going to die, and I will not be present. All sorts of things about like winterizing a home. At the end of the day, like if you're going to be gone for more than a couple months, you really just need somebody on site who can go and check on it. I don't think there's any real way around that. So I'm coming to grips with that on both sides. So if you're thinking of pulling off the second home life, which I don't necessarily recommend because I think it's way too much, if America sold canned Chuhai cocktails, I wouldn't be doing this. But because it doesn't, I am inconveniencing my life and spending a great deal of money for the privilege. So yeah, let's see, we're celebrating, 7 days from now, I was originally going to go on a solo trip to Japan. Becky had blessed it. It was actually her idea. She's like, you know what, your dad's death and taking care of your mom's finances and stuff and all the other shit that you've been doing for other people lately, maybe you should just take a trip on your own. It was her idea. And so I signed up to do that trip. That trip starts in 7 days, so I'm kind of currently in this interregnum where I am still on the lock down the condo we want to buy mission. If and when that ends, I will be in some liminal space between the 2 trips, which I will not be actually flying back and home to Florida. I will just sit and think about what I just did. So that trip was going to be my 20th anniversary because it was June 2005 when I first came to Japan to do an internship in Hikone in Shiga Prefecture, followed by a study abroad semester, so about 6 months. And, incidentally, this interregnum that I'm speaking of is Becky and my's 18th wedding anniversary. So, not to say that because it's got 2 years on her, Japan is nearer and dearer to my heart than she is. But it does have seniority, I suppose, in that I'm going to be missing my anniversary to be here drinking canned Chuhai. So I love you, Becky. I hope you're listening. If you're listening, it's probably a sign that you miss me, and I miss you too. Even though it's been a grand total of 23 hours. We missed each other immediately because we're still lovebirds, and we totally are just obsessed with each other as a factor of both of the depth and breadth of our love and also how few friends we have, which explains why we both have podcasts. But seriously, folks, it's been a pretty wild trip so far. A few random memories stand out. If you follow internet people, there's a guy named Craig Mod. I don't know what his legal name is, but he internets as Craig, no space, no adornment, M-O-D at the end. Blogging for a long time. He writes books, like one-off little fancy books for people who like fancy avant-garde shit. And there's a book that he wrote several years ago. I think it was like around just pre-COVID. He was taking these long walks through Japan. He lives in Japan. And it was called Kisa by Kisa, referring to Kisa-ten, which are like post-war period coffee shop, tea shop, restaurant places, cafes. You could think of it as a traditional Japanese cafe, I suppose. And among the many things, first of all, they're dying because the people who started these things up are old now, and the people who still go to them are old. And so when you think of like what makes a kisa relative to like a Starbucks, which has since taken over Japan, and there's now more Starbuckses in Japan than McDonald's is in Japan, and there were a lot of those. What makes a kisa, I think, I close my eyes and I think, okay, well, I'm thinking like, a lot of dark wood. I'm thinking very fancy blended coffee that costs $7 and you don't get free refills. I'm thinking of parfaits and toast and eggs and egg sandwiches in terms of food offerings. I'm also thinking about smoking. There's a lot of smoking going on typically. And otherwise it's just normal cafe shit. Well, thing about Craig's book, at least his discussion of his book, I don't know how much the book, I didn't buy the book because I'm not a book person, but I listen to podcasts while I'm trying to fall asleep. And on such a podcast 5 years ago, he was talking about the book. And he said that he'd fallen in love with pizza toast, which was like a Japanese Kisa-ten specialty, because not having a lot of equipment in terms of a kitchen facility, you would have like a toaster oven or a small grill, and you could put like a big old fucking Texas toast into that. And so you do that, you'd slather on, probably initially it was just ketchup, but like, some sort of tomato sauce and some sort of probably not very high quality shredded cheese. Not a lot of it. Maybe some pepperoni, maybe like a mushroom or something. It's like a Western style dish that a middle school student could totally make. Like on the list of, if you've got like a middle school age child, there's probably a list of like appliances they're allowed to use and not allowed to use in the kitchen. This is a middle school and under friendly after school snack. And yet, Craig had tremendous affinity for it. And I'd had it once or twice before, but it had been years, because most Kisa-ten are closed and the ones that are still operating don't necessarily serve it. And so I found, I was in Niigata with Becky, and I was looking for some lunch. I was looking for a good egg sandwich, honestly. And so that had me looking at Kisa-ten. None of them offered egg sandwiches, which was a bummer, because Japanese egg sandwiches are awesome. So instead, I saw right on the Tabe log reviews, like, this place has pizza toast. And so I was like, all right, I'll check it out. Pizza toast is great. So I went and I showed up. And I wasn't prepared for like the karmic moment that it was bringing upon me. But I sat down at the table. I ordered a blend coffee set with a pizza toast. 800 yen, 750 yen, which translates to about $5. They had a little cabbagey salad as well. Tabasco sauce and salt as well, which is not typically served with any fucking thing in Japan. So I appreciate that. Although I guess pizza sometimes will come with Tabasco here. Often come with Tabasco here. Correction. I was getting served my stuff, and just before it came out, I noticed like this was a scene. I did the sort of like letterbox directorial view of the situation. And to my left, there was a woman dressed like she was in her 30s, but clearly in her late 50s, smoking a long drag on a skinny cigarette, not with a fancy holder, but it was the middle of the day. She was by herself. There's a salaryman in the center, and he was just chain smoking, and he was reading the paper, a physical paper newspaper. And he saw me come in, he was like, yeah, I'm good. I killed whatever vibe he had, he walked out. And on the right, there were two older women, and they were having a little chat. And it looked like they'd been coming to this place for 40 fucking years. And then on the far right, in the corner, there was a window. And through that window, you could see excavation equipment, like those claw diggery guys. I don't remember my Tonka truck, toys, the transformers that like do things in the ground, and then don't transform into killer robots, those ones. Yeah, so clearly, like, the store next door was being actively torn down, and it was pretty loud, and it was the middle of the day, so it was not the most, like, inviting environment. And so I'm just, like, zooming out here, and I'm, like, taking it all in. The master was clearly often in Japanese restaurant terminology, the master is nomenclature for whoever is running the joint, because most places are just run by a dude or a lady, but a dude. Almost always. And so I noticed him, and he was, dressed up, all formal like a butler, which I guess is also kind of part of Kisa culture if considers itself a higher class one. And his hair was all stringy and surfer duty, like he was like a cool guy, but also like late 60s, and so like wiry and really gray. And this feeling of just like, man, this might be the last time I get to go to one of these if I don't make a point of it. And then all of a sudden, right before the pizza toast came, I started hearing this like really deep bellowing howl, and I looked back, and it was that lady. It was that older, dressed like younger lady. And I realized, in addition to smoking and having some food in front of her, she was sobbing. She was sobbing like she was at a funeral of her entire immediate family who'd just been murdered by her brother or something. Like, it was a sob that was just deep. Like, she was experiencing deeper feelings than I think I've ever felt. I think I've felt deeper feelings about her in that moment than I've felt about any of the own shit in my own life. My dad died in December, and I saw some people get really, really like emotionally impacted by it, grieving deeply. And it was touching. I grieve in my own way. I cry and stuff, and I get misty. I'm ashamed to say that I get as misty at the end of a good movie when the soundtrack hit just right, as I do when like somebody close to me dies, which is fucked up, but I don't know. There's no right way to do it. But thinking of all those experiences with all those people grieving around the loss of my dad, I didn't hear anything like this. Like, I know people loved him, but like whatever she's mourning is either real fucked up and dark. Like, I don't know, like maybe she's got all of her money out to loan sharks and she can't pay, right? Like maybe she had a pachinko addiction, or her husband did, or, like deep shame has fallen upon her and her family. Listen, look, the reason for all this speculation is the 5 minutes between her starting to sob and me receiving my pizza toast was about 45 minutes long in terms of how it felt. And so she's just sobbing. It's getting wet. It's getting mucusy, because there's just like the waterworks are running. I get the pizza toast, and as I'm receiving the pizza toast, the master is like looking at, he realizes what's happening the second that he sets it down. Looks at me and he's like, I don't know what we do here. Apparently, and I was actually immediately relieved because I thought, oh, well, good. This isn't a daily occurrence. People don't just come to your old-timey, run-down, about to go out of business cafe just to sob about how terrible their lives are and the regrets that they've accrued over a long life throughout Japan's post-war economic boom and then bust. So I was like, okay, well, at least this is weird for him too. Well, that makes me feel a little bit better. And she just kept on sobbing, and I was like, this pizza toast isn't getting any warmer. So I just started, and I was like eating it, and it was pre-sliced, so I didn't have to like cut it per se. But I did anyway, because my mouth's only so large. And I started eating it, and it was really crunchy. It was like extremely loudly crunchy, to the point where I was drawing the attention of the sobbing lady. And now she's looking at me and she's realizing, oh my God, this gaijin can see that I'm sobbing. And so whatever amount of, emotions were happening, the shame dial got turned up. And so now she's looking at me and looking at her food and looking at her cigarette and uncontrollably sobbing. And I just kept finishing that toast because I was in it to win it. I'd paid my 700 yen, or committed to pay. Drank my coffee, looked around, the sobbing lady eventually, like the guy eventually like busts the lady's table mid-sob, not really communicating. She pulled out a purse, paid something, and she eventually left. And I texted Becky like, that was really fucking weird. Like I don't know what just happened. And a few days later, Becky had an experience. She was here too in Japan for a couple of weeks with me. She had an experience where like she saw women alone sobbing in public. And then I saw another one on a train, and she was just sobbing by herself in public. No men sobbing, just women. I don't know why. Didn't get to ask. I should have asked. Maybe I could, like, and it's the kind of culture where like the right thing to do is to say fucking nothing and just let it happen. You know, this is a culture where if you're in an elevator, the worst thing you can do is talk at all. You just stare straight forward and you don't look at other people or think about their business. Well, you think about it, but you don't say anything. So like, you know, because you'd just be bringing more shame to like force somebody to vocalize what the fuck's going on, like by saying, are you okay or whatever? Like I saw like this woman, like she fell down in front of me, this older lady. She was about 4 feet tall and she was very old. And she was walking in front of me on the street in Shizuoka. And her whole body, it was like her bones were just jello or cartilage. It just like fell like it looked like bad video game physics, you know, just like crumpled in front of me at a weird angle. And I didn't know what to do. It was like kind of catchy, swoopy dive. And I was like, are you okay? And then the fact that I asked if she was okay was way worse for her from her perspective than the fact that I like was that she'd fallen at all. So that'll serve me right. So anyway, didn't say anything to the lady. Didn't say anything to any of the ladies. And then on Becky's last night here, because she went back yesterday, we were at a Moseburger. Becky was like, you know, I want one more Moseburger. I want like, you know, I need some more protein after dinner because we only got steak for dinner. And you know, it's your last time on the trip. You want to have like all the foods. You got to make sure that you get a good ramen. You know, you got to get a good tonkotsu ramen. You got to get a good tonkatsu pork cutlet, which is what I was about to say before I fucked up the pronunciation of those two words, which I seem to always do. So we're at Moseburger and she sits down. He finally gets her Moseburger, and then this woman sits down right next to her, just right next to her. And she's another older woman, lots of makeup, so it's kind of hard to tell what's going on. And she's sniffling, and she's like, stuff's happening in the eyes, and the water's going, and like lots of like quick sniffs. And I swear to God, my first reaction is she is either sobbing and trying not to sob really hard, or she's got some kind of respiratory infection that is going to result in both of us getting super COVID. And I was like, Becky, if there was like spare tables around, I would have really just picked up Becky's little basket of burger and like led her to another table surreptitiously somehow. But that wasn't on the table, literally, because there weren't any tables. So I instead just watched this lady sniffle, snob, cough a little, and walking out of there, the minute that we did, Becky and I both just turned to each other, and Becky's like 1, 2, 3, like Becky's like, whoa, that lady was sobbing, and I was like coughing, like dying, right? Like, and so we don't know for sure if she was sick or sobbing, but upon reflection, I think Becky's right. I think she was just also sobbing. It's a great national pastime. I don't know why more people don't do it. Seems like it's all the rage right now, especially among, you know, pre-elderly old women. I don't know where the elderly line is, but you know, they seemed ambulatory. Yeah. So sobbing women everywhere. That's apparently the next stage of Japan's depopulation crisis. The country that brought you, you know, the popular news line of what do they say, like there are more adult diapers sold in Japan every year than baby diapers, and that's been true for so long that it's like a trope now. Other stuff that's gone on in the trip that's memorable. I got to go out for dinner with Koichi Ito, and he's the fella who works on RuboCop so diligently, and RuboCop is the Ruby library upon which standard Ruby, the linter and formatter that I published initially, that Test Double maintains. He's done a lot of work by pulling stuff out of standard and into Rubocop, including most recently this lint roller plugin. And so if you follow my newsletter, I wrote about why that was so precious to me, and I'll link back to which one that was. I think it was January of this year's edition. And I wanted to get him out to dinner, thank him, get to know him better as a person. Had a great time, had a good meal. And in the process of the meal, it became clear I was asking about succession plans for Mats, the guy who runs Ruby. You know, he invented Ruby 35 some years ago. I think he's like 60 now. You know, a lot of people are asking, hey, you know, are you going to retire? Like, what's the succession plan look like? A lot of people assume it's going to be some sort of community vote among the committers to elect some kind of leadership or some kind of, you know, governing board, steering committee. I don't know. But I used the phrase BDFL with Koichi and realized he had never heard it before. And I was like, oh, well, it stands for, and then realizing that all of the contingent words in this are kind of hard, or two of them anyway. Benevolent dictator for life. You know, like DHH over Ruby on Rails is a benevolent dictator for life. Linus Torvalds over Linux is a benevolent dictator for life. Bit of a tongue twister. And Mats as well is a BDFL. Now, Mats knows the phrase BDFL because people talk to him about it all the time. His English is pretty good. But like Koichi didn't. And so here I am like asking in, Googling in Japanese, like what does BDFL means? And I found a Wikipedia article and it had a funny title. And the funny title was Yasashi Shushin Dokusaisha. So like that phrase right there literally means nice, lifelong dictator, or kind, lifelong dictator. And so there's a Wikipedia article that I will link to that is literally like explaining to people what BDFL is, as if it's some sort of like organizing principle for how we run the world. It's clear in the article that it's like mostly about open source stuff because that's the only real place that this has emerged so far. Because we've only got really 1.5 generations of humans writing software. But one assumes that we're going to get to the point where BDFLs are going to be a flash in the pan. Although software still is and remains one of the only things where like a single person can build it and then the rest of the world can depend on it simultaneously with like zero marginal cost for duplication. So it's not like, you know, if you were to build a chair and then everyone in the world wanted that chair, right? Like you would need to scale up some sort of human infrastructure and like teams and peoples and committees and like branch offices and shit and factories. So like succession would be built into that because you'd have a whole lot of people around you. Like you just like write one really awesome thing, like Badgers, like Daniel, what's his name, who writes curl. Like he could in theory just write curl and never share it with anyone, but like curl is a tool that's used by everyone, right? So I don't know, maybe BDFLs are just sort of built into software as the default way that software is governed. I don't know. Oh yeah, whose bone is that? So Becky and I, we will often, when we're in Japan, say to each other, whose bone is this? And we say it when we're eating a food that is, on a stick, but the stick is a bone, a real bone from a species. And this happens most often with frankfurters, like hot dogs. So it's kind of like a gag item, except like you see it too often for it to be strictly a gag. Like, was it Pizza Law or Pizza Pan in Japan has like a side item like chicken nuggets or chicken wings. You can order sausages, and the sausages come on a bone. And so it's like, it looks like a hot dog, looks like a little sausage, like a little Vienna sausage, maybe 4 inches long, but it's on a bone, like a drum, like a chicken drum wing bone. And you're like, that sausage is not a chicken sausage necessarily. And if it's pork or whatever, like I don't know what pork bone, pig bone maps to this. And I don't know, how the bone was inserted or came to be associated with this meat product. And the dissonance, right, between like the meat product that I am trying to consume, the bone that was presumably dead a long time before it came to be reassociated with this different meat, that I'm eating it from, kind of hoping that you don't bite into for that reason. I don't know, like biting into a bone that is eminently related to the meat that it's that on seems fine. Like there's a similar amount of life force or Gaia still associated with the bone, so that seems okay. Like I mean, the tendons are still connected, so it's kind of all of a piece. But like if this bone just been sitting in a drawer for 3 months, like I don't want to be biting into that because that's not hygienic. Anyway, when we eat such a product, because we have no shame and we're happy to order things that are hilarious, Becky and I will look at each other and say, oh, whose bone is this? It's happened long enough that this has kind of been a running gag for close to a decade between us. And I just had a whose bone is this moment. I was at a kushiyage place. Kushi means stick and age means fried. Often referred to as a kushikatsu place because like katsu means cutlet, and like one of their kind of go-to items are beef or pork cutlets that are fried and on sticks. There you go. Well, this place had one called churipu, and I don't remember having had it before. I probably have, but I didn't really connect what the fuck was going on here. And what came out was like an all meat, like felt processed. But I've since learned it wasn't. It was like all of the good meat on a chicken drum, and with some of that like thigh meat kind of rolled in. And it was really good, and it was fried, and there was no real bones or cartilage or tendon. It was just like a big old fucking chunk of meat. And it was on a bone. And I was like, I've eaten a lot of chicken. And I've eaten all, we ordered the rotisserie chicken. I've eaten all the parts. I've investigated. I've gotten a lay of the land. And this kind of meat bite and this kind of bone hold, they do not map together. Like on any normal species of chicken, I shouldn't be able to do this. So a churipu, which is katakana and it's taking after tulip. So like this is I've since Googled, and apparently it's a delicacy in Japan particularly, even though it's called to French something, a drumette. You take the drum and you kind of like just like reconstitute all of the meat at the end of the bone. You don't actually remove the bone. So it is the same chicken's bone most of the time, I have learned. So the answer to whose bone is this is the same chicken that I was eating. But I'll post a picture. Maybe that'll be the art for this episode. It's delicious and innovative and distressing. And that's what I love about this country. So, well, that's about enough life stuff for now. Let's follow up to what else is going on. All right, so let's follow up on follow-up items. If you are a subscriber to Searles of Wisdom, which is my monthly newsletter, the idea of the newsletter, the conceit, if you will, is that every month I put out an episode, an issue right in the beginning of the month to describe what the fuck happened last month. And of course, the joke is, here's 2 things that happened last month and an essay about a totally unrelated evergreen topic. And it's really bad for SEO because a lot of these essays are things where I should really post this to the blog as like a proper blog post. But really they just live as issues of this newsletter. And I try to, because the line between newsletter and blog are so blurry to begin with, I kind of like treat it like a playground for subscribers to just see some side of me that I don't normally show. But really, the reason that I write the newsletter is for me, because I want to, as I'm fond of saying, plant a stake in the ground every month and say, every month I need to have a useful thought, a deep thought about something that fucking matters. It could be a retrospective thing, it could be a prospective thing, it could be a silly thing, it could be creative writing that doesn't mean anything at all, right? Like I just want to have gone through the exercise and the pain and the tumult and the turmoil of writing something carefully. This month was a real fucking mess because on the flight, as April 30th was becoming May 1st or May 1st was becoming May 2nd, I didn't have internet access and I wrote like 1,500 words of what would become 2,500 words of this newsletter. And that last bit, that last little nugget, where I'd already kind of built up everything to my point pretty much clearly, that only took me like 19 more days. But I got there. And it was miserable because I'd sit down to write, but then I'd be working on condo-related stuff, or something would come up, or I'd have to switch hotels. And for whatever reason, I never got more than like an hour and a half at the computer at any given time. And I was really struggling to land the plane. Even remember, like, what? By week 2 of this, right? You're like, what the fuck was I trying to say with this newsletter to begin with? And then you get sunk cost fallacy. You're like, I could just scrap this and write about something else, like how to buy a condo in Japan, since that's all that fits in my goddamn head right now. But the problem is I haven't actually successfully bought a condo in Japan yet, and so it would be a little presumptive to write a blog, like a how-to post about that. So I just kept fucking that chicken. I just was like, you know what? I'm just gonna force it, because sometimes in life, things are hard. And the only way through is through, and you gotta just nose axe grindstone your way to the other end. So that's what I did. And I got through it, and I wrote it. And the minute that I published it, it was funny. I was sitting next to Becky, and she just happened to check her mail, and she is reading it, and she's chuckling and, like, you know, commenting and stuff. And so it's funny when I've got such a strict barrier in my mind between the things I do for me and the things I do for other people. And the weird thing is, everything that I share publicly into the universe, including this podcast, is first and foremost for me. It's because I want to process stuff, in this case, orally, out my mouth hole. And I you know, if you don't like listening to your own shit, right? Like, I listen to this podcast, and I enjoy this podcast. This might be, Breaking Change is Justin Searles' favorite podcast. I publish the episode, I do all the work, I do the edit, I put it on the internet, and then it shows up in my Apple Podcast player, and I'm like, sick, motherfuckers! Got a new episode of Breaking Change on my feed, what? And then I listen to it, and I'm like, damn, this guy slaps. Like, shit you not, that is my lived experience. And you can't argue with somebody's lived experience. It's something I learned in 2020. And why is that? It's because, like, I think my mom is somebody who is, like, very, like, as a child, I'm saying, like when I was a kid, let me back up. My mom is somebody who she commands attention. And one way to do that is to filibuster, right? Like, just talk too much, as I do in podcast form. And one way to do that is to be really thoughtful and insightful, and or just throw people off, right? Like, subvert expectations is the modern phraseology that we often use for this. And my mom's, like, really good at both of those things. She's really good at talking and verbally processing through all of her thoughts. And unfortunately, like her, I often struggle to actually know what I'm thinking until I've had a chance to talk through it. Although GPT Advanced Voice Chat is, like, helping me do that a little bit better and spare some of my friends and family. But because I grew up in an environment where somebody in the household kind of communicated that way, somebody as impressionable as one's own mother, I just had it, like, buried into my skull at a very young age that, like, it was everyone's duty to be fascinating. Like when we talk about, like, what's a good life, it's like, well, you live with dignity and integrity, and you follow these 10 commandments, and you are an upstanding member of society, and you do well in school, and you get a good job, and you get good pay, and then you have a kid, and you get married or whatever the fuck, and then you mow the lawn a lot, and you keep mowing the lawn until you can't anymore, and then you go to another place where they mow the lawn for you, but you kind of just stay in the bed forever, and then you die. But, like, there's an additional imperative in my brain, which is be fucking fascinating. Like, first and foremost, if you're living your life and you're a boring ass fuck, meaning that, like, you find your own goddamn life boring. Like, look, I'm not here to judge. I'm saying this moment, this comment could be the first day of the rest of your life. If you couldn't stand in front of a microphone for an hour and talk about yourself and how you're thinking through things and what you're doing and what, you know, if you would bore yourself to try to do that, then something is wrong. Like, what's the point of life if it's not to be interesting? And the greatest calling in my experience, at least in my ideology, I should say, like I'm saying these things categorically because like they're axiomatic from like the Justin Searles cerebellum perspective. I know most people don't act like this, but for me, a day in my life that is boring or dull or unproductive or doesn't move the needle in any way or doesn't make a fun story, like that's a day that's wasted. And we only have 4,000 weeks, and 4,000 times 7 is a number, I'm told. I don't want to guess at the number because I've forgotten it. I'm not going to type it now because I can't think math while I'm talking. I'm good at verbally processing, but I can't think through math. 28? I want to say. Anyway, it's got to be 28, right? Yeah, Jesus fuck. So 28, 1,000 days? It's not a lot of days. So you waste a day going to work and then not making something of it, right? Or coming home, right? And just like tuning out. Like for me, and the thing is like when I say be fascinating, I don't mean go goddamn bungee jumping every day. Like for me, part of it could just be, where are you? What are you doing? How are you thinking about what you're doing? Like, like yesterday, my laptop right now is standing on top of what seems to be a 2.5 foot cube cardboard box. Me figuring out where to find this box, how to buy it, how to get it back to this hotel and not look like I was robbing them, and then assemble it so that I could kind of build this shitty studio that I'm standing in front of right now. Because I needed to prop up the laptop so I could speak at a camera at like the appropriate height, right? And so like the number of things like working backwards is just like, okay, well, there's no tall tables in this room. I don't want to be seated because there's like a vanity chair over there that wouldn't be appropriate for sitting for 3 hours. And then I was like, okay, so how do I make the laptop tall? And I'm like pulling down like this like gigantic zippered bag of extra like futon and comforter, I guess, maybe pillow. And I'm like piling them up and putting the laptop on top of this pretty precarious. I'm like, that's not a solution. I go outside and I start looking for stores. I'm in the middle of this particular prefecture that is kind of a suburban hellscape. And so wandering around, I go to a 100 yen store. I'm like, maybe if I can pile up some like inboxes and then, like paper inboxes, right, that you would put documents into. If I stack up 7 of those and put the laptop on top of that, and that didn't work. So I went to a home goods store and I was like, wait a second, like they sell moving boxes. So I started asking the lady, like, do you guys sell moving boxes? She's like, oh yes, are you moving? I'm like, no, I just need to can you just show me where they are? And so I go and find where they are, and I get, to realize that the way that they measure boxes in Japan is, of course, metric and not imperial, and that they count it by like the diagrams for like how big each of these boxes were like confusing enough. But then I realized for each box size they had a sample unit that you could like fuck with. I was like, okay, cool. And so like I am just like literally squatting down and like assembling different cardboard boxes. I buy the one that I want. I start walking out. And then immediately there's a huge windstorm, and I basically got like a kite, like this huge like unfolded box, and it's like whipping away and it starts to tear. Like I get back to the hotel, I assemble the box, I get some of the binding tape that she'd left to mark it as having been sold. I seal the box with that, and now here we are, and I've got my own little recording studio, right? Like a stupid fucking story. It's not interesting on its own, but because it was like, there was the pressure of like, I got to figure out how to like record a podcast tomorrow morning because I'm only in this hotel for 2 days and then I got shit to do. I don't have time to do it afterwards. Like, I only get one shot at this. How am I going to make this laptop be 3 feet taller? It became a story because that's got all of the workings of something that's just, there is a tension there, right? Like I could fail, like, and things could go wrong. And it doesn't mean that you have to find the story interesting. It just means like I was living it, and it was like, stressful. You know, maybe there's a relationship between my desire to find myself and my life fascinating and the fact that I am so high strung and so high stressed and dialed in all the time, right? We often think about the stress as the negative thing, right? Well, you should be chill, you should be more relaxed. Well, the thing is, like, if you're super relaxed, you also kind of just don't fucking care. And if you're super relaxed about your life, maybe sometimes it means you don't fucking care about your life. Here I am like, all right, so 466 millimeters seems to be tall enough, right? But like, could I stack it up to 520 millimeters if it was only 380 millimeters wide, right? Like, I'm doing this like math and like sampling it out and trying to judge if an empty cardboard box would fall over with a laptop on top of it at these different perspectives. Now, like, that's like, is that me being high strung and stressed out? Yes, but also like it kind of incorporates into the, like, you know, everything short of the soundtrack is playing in this home goods store as I'm like, you know, CSI ladying with like all of the like, you know, trigonometry and calculus derivatives like floating in my head in front of me, right? So all that to say, the newsletter took me a long time. Took me a long time to write. And that's that function for me of pausing and sharing things with you, ostensibly with you, for myself though, like in a periodic, occasional way. It's for me, it is really, really valuable to punctuate my existence through some scatterbrained short-term things. Like I started vlogging. I haven't shared any of these, but these are just like 1-minute videos that I record every single day. Vertical video, talking to myself while I'm walking from place to place. It's kind of like a little journal, right? That is a different function, right, than going on a podcast and talking for 3 hours about like contemporaneous tech news and programming shit. Is a different one than writing a monthly newsletter that like you force yourself to like, this is going to matter. This is going to be about something important. Is a different thing than just writing a blog post, right? Like these are all different creative exercises. And the thing I guess I want to impart about this is that I'm sorry that my newsletter was late, but I just, and Becky very many times was like, dude, you could just be with me and be a chill, normal motherfucker. And like, maybe people wouldn't notice if you missed your monthly newsletter. Hell, if anything, you're just gonna call attention to the fact it was 3 weeks late by putting it out on May 19th. I just couldn't do it. Not because of them, but because of me. I want to be able to say that I did this thing. And I want to have done it because I think that there's value in it. I've decided that there's value in it. And I am the arbiter of what I believe is interesting, worth it, fascinating. And so anyway, I think about that sometimes because I've never heard this articulated by anybody else. So I'm not sure how you feel about it. Like, I don't think, I'd be curious if you think that like this is a new idea to you or an old idea, an obvious idea. Either way, I'd love to hear your perspective on you and your own fascinatingness. And fortunately for you, you can email podcast@searles.co, and potentially I'll read this on the show if I can just get over myself and not keep talking about this meta layer. Moving right along. I posted, again, a follow-up to the blog. I posted that I've been to 35 of the 47 prefectures in Japan. I did that as an exercise because Koichi was asking how many I'd been to, and I didn't really know. It turns out the answer was 35, although today I'm staying in Saitama, in part because I'd never been there before, and so now it's been 36. So I'll have to update that page. And I've got now a month or so to travel the country, and I'll see how many I'm able to knock off in the course of that. In fact, I was thinking about potentially doing a solo road trip, and touring around some of the more, back burner places that are kind of like off the beaten path. And realize I found the service I can rent a decent enough, newish enough car for just $500 a month, and that's not a lot. That's like less than a lot of people's payment. So I might just rent a car for a month and just drive and figure it out. Still trying to figure out what I want to do with that. Anywho, the biggest follow-up, right, is like version 36 was, hey, I'm going to fly to Japan tomorrow and buy a condo. I was young and stupid. But I've been to a lot of places in Japan. I've been all over the place. I've lived in suburbs. I've spent a lot of time in downtown cities. I've been out in the real boonies. I've been up in mountains. I've been on the sea. Like I said, I've been in most of the prefectures of the country. Prefectures are like states, if you don't know. This trip in particular, we went to Asakusa, which is like a historically significant part of Tokyo, and we walked in on this 3-day Matsuri festival, and they're moving the big Shinto floats and stuff, and everyone's excited and drunk. And I had a beautiful day in Yokohama. We went to Yokohama together. It was a gorgeous, sunny, warm day, and we walked all through all the piers. We walked up and down the famous Chinatown. And all I can say is I'm really glad to not be moving to those places. And I'm really glad to not be buying a house in either of them or in the vast majority of places in Japan that I've been. I love to visit, right? But what do I want out of a second home is a place to have a home base where I can sit and I can do good work, where I can walk, to a gym, get a good workout, exercise my body as well as my mind. That has delicious food, also ideally within walking distance, and entertainment, ideally within walking distance. And then also fantastic transportation, so I can get wherever I want to go in the country relatively easily. It also should have good weather. It should have good access to nature, right? So be near the mountains, be near the ocean, not necessarily in the middle of both. Should be relatively protected from natural disasters. The particular spot that Becky and I have landed is just south of Shizuoka Station, and it is literally all of these things. From the perspective of amenities and stuff to do, the city is so diverse. Setting aside the part that the economy is pretty good and it's a very nice place and affluent, which I always like because affluence tends to breed businesses and shit to do and nice things to eat. But it feels almost like a video game map. So I was in Yokohama and I'm playing through Yakuza Like a Dragon, which takes place in Yokohama. Except in the game, you can run from one end of the video game map to the other in 3 minutes. And in real Yokohama, I can tell you, just walking across that pier took Becky and I 2 hours, and it was exhausting. And it was so sparsely populated with shit to do that I was pretty boring. Shizuoka is more like the video game. You just walk, every block has some kind of cool thing going on. In the weekends, there's activities and there's people doing shit. It's just a vibrant town. You go from the station, you walk a couple blocks, it's full of restaurants. You walk another block, it's a red light district. You walk another block, you have all of the kind of government buildings and municipal stuff. You go in the other direction, you've got this beautiful residential suburban area, and you've got a city park and a school, and you walk a little bit further and you got a commercial district, and all of this is totally accessible, within a 10-15 minute walking radius. And then if you want to go somewhere, you can get on the 2 train stops over and you're on the beach, and you've got little beach town stuff with new developments and restaurants and great stuff to do. And if you go take the other train line up just a few stations, you got several other little town-like environments that you could visit, and go a little further than that, and now you're in the mountains, right? And almost all of it has great views of Mount Fuji if you get up high. It's got, because the Tokugawa shogunate was based in that area, it's got this famous road, so it's got a ton of rich history as well, and a famous temple and a ropeway that connects that temple up to this 1,400 stairs that you can climb, and all these kind of more traditionally touristy historical activities. It is just absolutely chock-a-block with shit that I love about this country in one tight place. Oh, and then in terms of access, it's an hour, I'm not trying to sell you on this, but why I'm so excited about this particular city and why all of my research kind of landed me towards this might be the only city like this in the country. You're an hour from Tokyo, but via the Shinkansen, so it's fast and convenient, but not an hour, not anywhere close to an hour via commuter rail. And most people in Japan, like the Tokyo sprawl is defined by how far can I get on a commuter pass, because my employer will pay a monthly fee for a commuter rail pass for me. But like that radius is significantly smaller, and Shizuoka is well beyond it. And so you'll never experience this like sort of just the general sprawl from Tokyo into Shizuoka, at least not with the rail system as it exists today. And so you can get to Tokyo in an hour, but you have to pay $50 on a Shinkansen, which no commuter is ever going to do. It doesn't have too many tourists because there's not that many famous tourist things to do. And so it's got a few hotels, a few nice hotels, but it's not just overrun, especially with foreign tourists all the time, which is great. In the other direction, you can take the same Shinkansen bullet train to Maibara Station, which is in Shiga, where I'm, started my life in Japan. And it's pretty much equidistant from Tokyo. It's like another hour, 20 minutes or so. You go just like one stop further is like fucking Kyoto, and one stop after that is Osaka. Like, and so you're pretty quickly like, wow, you're like right smack between Tokyo and Osaka. And on the Tokaido Sen, which is the most important Shinkansen track in the country, you can go all the way, most of the way up Honshu and most of the way down Honshu, and then that connects down to Kyushu. Pretty soon it'll connect all the way up to throughout most of Hokkaido as well. Like, this is really nice. Like, you can land at Haneda Airport, be to where this particular condo is going to be. If you play your cards right and all the timing works out, with a single train transfer, you can be there in like an hour and 25 minutes. Like, it's nuts. It is too good. And I landed here and I got here on day one. And I was like, clearly like I'm going to be brought down to earth. Like, there's no way that this place is going to hit every single one of these checkboxes as well as it does, as well it looks like it does. But it has, and in fact, my high expectations have been exceeded every single time. Great food, great people, great experiences, and as I visit all these other cities that have been on my list, like, people were telling me to move to Asakusa or Yokohama, or in this case, Saitama. Literally, I had different people tell me all three of those places, and as I experience those places, I'm like, man, I am so glad I didn't listen to those motherfuckers. I'm so glad I just did my own research, and me and my true friend, ChatGPT, landed on Shizuoka. So that's how we wound up here. The process of trying to purchase the condo has been really challenging, though, and for understandable reasons. Unlike a lot of countries, foreign non-residents are allowed to buy real estate in the country legally, which is great because that's exactly what I am, a foreign non-resident. However, due to changes in banking regulations pertaining to anti-money laundering, as well as just general trends where a lot of Western banks that used to pride themselves on having a presence in Asia, they've pulled out of retail banking in Asia generally. And so that drawback, like, for example, Citibank used to have a bunch of branches in Japan that you could just get a retail bank account and have it participate as a domestic-ish bank account in Japan. That's gone now. And so the regulations having changed, there's not a bank in the country that'll like let a foreign non-resident open a bank account. And it's just the know your customer rules are too strict for the anti-money laundering stuff. It's just not worth anybody's time. And so no one lets you do it. So rule number one, foreign non-residents are technically allowed to buy real estate. Rule number two, they basically functionally can't get a bank account. Rule number three is that condo fees, like if you buy a condo and you have association fees like an HOA or something like that, those pretty much by convention have to be paid out of an auto draft monthly payment out of a domestic bank account, because Japan's ACH equivalent, its domestic bank transfer system, is unique to Japan. So you need the domestic bank account to pay the monthly fee, which you cannot get as a foreign non-resident, but you can buy as a foreign non-resident, which is why, step 4, Justin realized real quick as soon as I landed, there's a reason why foreign non-residents don't tend to buy residential condo units that aren't designed for foreigners by just everyday property developers. Because those property developers are only going to sell to you if you can demonstrate that you're going to be able to pay the monthly fees that they're charging you after delivery. You might be able to buy a used condo, no problem, because at that point, the only person whose approval you need is the seller, and they're getting out of there, right? You might be able to buy a house, no problem, because it doesn't have the same problem. You just have to be able to pay your taxes. So yeah, I didn't realize I was doing it on hard mode, but there I was. And I worked through a series of different attempts to make this easier before I just gave up and did things I don't know if it's hard, most expensive way. I have an old bank account. I tried to reactivate it and it's dormant. I was not able to initially succeed there. Might take another stab at it. I considered starting a domestic corporation, which I could have done, but it would require me to actually have a shareholder who is a Japanese resident who could vouch for the company and then create the account, which sort of just takes me back to square one. At that point, I could just give power of attorney to somebody in Japan and say, hey, this is the person whose account I'm using to draw this fund, which I could do, but then that would, again, potentially raise anti-money laundering concerns or just like stress, it's weird, right? It's like, oh yeah, here's my HOA fee. Like, here's this guy named Jeff, his bank account and his bank account details. Like, he'll pay for all of my fees. That's weird. But there are property management firms, and that's ultimately where I landed. So the company does nothing but exactly this, basically, is facilitate foreign non-resident owners, usually for investment properties, usually for rentals, to pay their fees on their behalf using some sort of escrow scheme as a liaison. So I found, finding one that would do this for me was really tough, because it turns out that the vast majority of them either assume that you're renting it out, and so they make the money back from that administrative headache that they're doing for you by like charging 1.5% of the rent of whoever's renting the place. Or there are real estate agents that do it as sort of like a cost of doing business sort of thing to try to secure new leads for buyers. And so I found a bunch of services that do this, and I was like, yeah, I'm already like talking about getting into contract, and I just need somebody to do this one piece to like, essentially play this role of property representative and pay these accounts. And they're like, oh yeah, if you're not working with us as a client, we're not going to do that for you because it's a pain in the ass. I'm like, all right, great. So I finally found a company that would like actually just do the thing, and that's very delightful. So between that, I got all my ducks in a row. I'm signing a contract on Saturday, knock on wood, and I couldn't be more excited. Everyone involved has been really wonderful. A friend here, a local friend here, who's been a tremendous asset in helping me every single step of the way. He's been a real true friend. It seems like it might be happening. Now, stay tuned to version 38 of the show, because it might all go sideways. And if it does, it does. But I've learned a lot in the process, and it's been a great experience overall, even though it's been pretty trying and time consuming and exhausting. Yeah, I've got nothing else done for the better part of a month, but this is going to be one of the most memorable months of my life. And remember, rule one with me is be fascinating. It's every single day has been a fucking adventure. So there we are. God, so many little adventures here. Speaking of, so in America, we just sign for shit. You can sign your name Daffy Duck, and as long as you're the one doing it, people are like, all right, sure. And if the signature really, really matters, somebody might insist that it sort of resembles your name. And if it really, really, really matters, the thing that tends to matter most with signatures in the US is that your signature today should look like it used to look like on some reference document. So, for example, when you vote in America, the way that a lot of voter ID laws work is that you need to make sure that the signature on the envelope or whatever, the ballot that you submitted, looks like the signature usually on your state ID or driver's license. And that's the closest we have to any sort of verification that you are who you say you are. Well, in Japan, as opposed to signatures, they use seals, which are called hanko, like little plunky downy stamps that you have them, and they're like stick shaped, and you open up a little case, and you press it against some ink, and then you stamp the paper, and that's how you sign a thing. Now, it's a much more rigorous system, because not only is every hanko designed to be more or less unique. There's a cottage industry. Every town has like a little hanko maker who makes these unique-ish rubber seals with people's kanji Chinese character names on them. So you buy one. And there's nothing special about it per se. It should say your name on it, but there might be like a little flourish there or styling to kind of make it your own, make it unique. And then in whatever municipality you live in, what makes it authoritative is that you go to the city hall and you say, hey, I'm a resident, I live here, here's my identification, like my number card or whatever. Or if you're a foreigner, your Zaidu card. You go to the city hall and you say, okay, here's my hanko and here's my ID, and I want to register this with city hall. And then you do that, and you'll get what's called an inkan shome, or maybe an inkan torokusho. Like you'll get back a document saying like, okay, this is registered as you, and internally they will have an internal registry of like, yes, this person's name, this person's address is associated with this particular stamp. So that way, if you ever get engaged in like a real estate transaction, for example, you can go back to a notary or you can go back to the municipality and get a fresh copy indicating that, yes, you still live there, you still are you, and this is still the hanko that's registered to your name. Get a fresh copy of that. It's got to be fresh, like 3 months or less old. And then you take that to the closing. You say, this is the certification that this stamp is my stamp, and then you stamp the document, and then that's how you do it, right? And it's a chain of trust system. So like that makes some kind of sense. Signatures, granted, they make no fucking sense at all. So when I was sitting down at the condo, they're like, well, okay, you could register a stamp. And I was like, well, the thing is, legally in Japan, like you can't actually register a stamp with a municipality if you're not a resident. Like you just can't. I had one registered in Nara when we lived there, but like there's just no analogous way to do that if you're not a resident, because it's the municipality that holds it, and holds it based on contingent of your address. And if a non-resident inherently doesn't have an address, I just can't do that. So they're like, okay, well, then what? And they used a word that I don't know if it was the technical word or not, but essentially, basically, a signature certificate is the English translation that the U.S. Embassy has landed on using for this, because honestly, it's like I think the Japanese would be like show me show, which is very funny. That's 5 kanji that mostly just use 2 syllables over and over. So figuring out how to do that, I was thinking, I could go to a local notary and I could show them my passport and get one of these signature certificates. But then realizing that unless you're in Tokyo, that might be a little bit weird or not a normal function that they do a lot. So they might, scrutinize it. And the realtor said, and my friend said, like, look, you got to go to the U.S. Embassy to do this. That's going to be what is authoritative and convincing to us. And so I went to the U.S. Embassy. I got a last minute appointment. Appointments are normally like a month out for this sort of thing. And I didn't have a whole month. But I was just checking the site and it was like, oh, a new appointment opened up at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow. I guess I'm going to book it. So took advantage of that Shinkansen out of Shizuoka, got out the door at like 5:30 in the morning, got to the U.S. Embassy. It was as fraught as I feared. It's literally like going back to America, where it's just like, people aren't nice to you and it's kind of shitty and it's like dirty and stinky and everyone's kind of rude. Now granted, the actual notaries, like the staff that I dealt with directly, were really, really lovely, kind people doing the very best they can with limited resources. Don't get me wrong. But like from a vibes perspective, man, it was a real shift. Also, like the thing about Japanese bureaucracy and rules is like, yeah, they're really onerous and there's a lot of them, but they're internally consistent and people follow them religiously. One of the rules when you go to the embassy is you can't take a bag with you. Totally fair. You can't take family, can't take people with you. It's like security is really important. They say you can't take a bag larger than 10 inches by 10 inches. And I was like, okay, so like, what if you're there to notarize a document? Because A4 standard issue, like the equivalent of like letter page documents, is like 8.27 times 11.69 inches. So you're saying I can't take a briefcase because that's bigger than 10 by 10? with my documents in it? Like, what do I do, right? Do I have to carry naked paper into there and just hope that like it doesn't rain? Like, I spent so much more time thinking about this 10 by 10 fucking bag rule than anyone who's ever worked at the US Embassy has ever thought about it. And of course, like, they're not open to feedback about this. I don't assume. But like, I literally went to the 100 yen store, I went to Daiso, and I got like a transparent document, soft shell document zipper just to protect it from the potentiality of rain the day that I went. So that way it wasn't technically a bag. And you'll never guess, but when I walked in, a bunch of Americans just had bags and shit. Because of course they did. So that's what I get for caring. Anyway, that's all I got to follow up on now. We'll just have to see how Saturday goes. Thank you for joining me on this epic journey. Let's go have a terrible pun. Through the magic of time zones and internet, I was actually able to get a hold of one Aaron Patterson, the person on this program whose responsibility is to provide with us an entertaining joke, a pun, a bit of wordplay. I was able to get a hold of him and say, Aaron, I'm going to record a podcast. I need a pun. And he dutifully replied in invisible ink, as he always does. I don't know how he does it. Because whenever I try to send something in invisible ink, it just sends prematurely. But he did it, and it's time to reveal what he said, and then we'll take whatever he said. I will read it a couple times. I'll simmer, marinade. I'll stew in it for a bit, and then I'll rank it alongside all the other puns so far in 2025 season 2. So here we go. Getting there. Oh man. Aaron says, I never pre-order video games. Instead, I just buy now, play later. I never pre-order video games. Instead, I just buy now, play later. That's real good. That's real good. It's tight. You don't have to play video games to relate to it. Yeah, it's obviously it's a play on buy now, pay later, right? Klarna is in the news as getting completely just, apparently huge recession sign that like people are, in fact, I bet you that what inspired this is I sent him that article about how Klarna's financial reports are really indicating like people are failing to pay back their buy now, pay later purchases. Hopefully it wasn't for Taco Bell, but still, regardless, not good. This might be the new top one. All right. So what's the current top for this year? I thought installing a new shower would make my house worth a lot more, but it turned out to just be a wash. Boom. This is better. This is the number one pun of the year. No doubt in my mind. I was something addled mind, but I couldn't think of what. I am pun-addled. Get off my pun horse. All right, this is great. I'm excited. It's way more fun to have a pun that I don't hate to talk about with y'all than to have most of these puns. So I'm gonna, pull my shit back up. Sorry if you can hear more keyboard clackety-dackities. That is the nature of the mobile studio that we are dealing with. All right, so... boom. That was quick. That was easy. Number one pun of the year. I don't pre-order video games. Instead, I just buy now, play later. Okay, one other layer of this, right, is like if you do play video games, you probably know what it's like to like on a Steam sale or when a game releases, you buy a game because it's cheap, because like, you get some sense of urgency, like everyone else is doing it. So you buy it with the intention of like, oh yeah, I'll play that later. And then later never comes. And so you wind up, most of the games I spent most of the money on, like I've not actually gotten around to playing, right? Because time passes, then new games come out, right? Or you realize you just want to play the old games. So this pun hits deep, like it's a twist of the knife as well. And That's the kind of bittersweet confusion of feelings that we're looking for in puns on this podcast. So thanks, Aaron. That's a great one. I will come at you and tell you separately that this was a good pun, because Aaron, he's too busy to listen to a 3-hour podcast. He just likes to contribute. So thanks for that. So without further ado, let's take it to the news. I don't know how you like your babies, but I hope it's extra CRISPR-y. I didn't have a better way to lead into that. First story, just a little standalone piece. Turns out we've got Becky, ever since realizing that like CRISPR as a tool could create individualized genetic therapies for people, including, custom designer children that, have big tits and penises, or blonde hair, or whatever the fuck, or a lack of Down syndrome. Those are probably the top 5 checkboxes on the form. I've not had kids, but we've got our first ever incident of a child who had a really rare disease, and they did the CRISPR at it. They shot it full up of something that was going to go and slosh around in the mRNA stuff, and it's just it fixed the thing. And so the way that these individualized genetic therapies become normalized is when you're saving somebody's life who could not be saved otherwise, right? And so I think we're going to see a lot of this, and that's great because saving lives is good. Of course, it's also going to normalize a pathway in the fee-for-service medicine environment that we live in, industry that we all participate in America at least. And it's a hop, skip, and a jump away to, you're a 30-year-old and you're getting a shot and it's going to make your DNA reprogram itself to make your dick bigger. That's just around the corner. It's all thanks to this CRISPR baby for getting his life saved like this. So good job, kid. Future me will thank you. On to video game news. GTA 6, Grand Theft Auto, the 6th edition, where it's almost like this game series is a real life exponential back-off algorithm where like the first 2 happened within a year of each other, and then the third one came out a couple years after the second one, and then the fourth one was like about a year and a half after that, and the fifth one was about 2 years after that, and then GTA 4, which was like the 7th one, 6th one, like that one was like several years later, and then GTA 5 was like 6 years after that, I think, right? And here we are finally getting GTA 6, which is going to return us to Leonidas and the Florida fake state and Vice City and all these places. It seems like they're going to cover a lot of Florida in this game, except no Orlando, no theme parks as far as anyone can tell, which is a real disappointment. So Grand Theft Auto 6, that's what, like 11 years? I want to say that the 5 came out in 2014, maybe even sooner? I don't know. It's been in development for a long, long fucking time. And the first trailer was like a bit of a mood piece, and the graphics weren't amazing. It was like, okay, sure, Vice City 2, basically. This second trailer is also a mood piece in that it's a lot of cinematics stitched together and maybe some over-the-shoulder kind of like, gameplay-ish, but clearly not gameplay footage, with, the real voice actors, and you can see the story. It's kind of a Bonnie and Clyde sort of thing with 2 main characters, an extremely white man that's sure to please all of the white men out there who keep getting companies like Ubisoft to go bankrupt for deigning to have female main characters. It's probably going to be very successful, no doubt. But the story looked great. Like this trailer looks fucking awesome. The graphics look great. And this is what I thought, what I assumed all AAA games would look like by now. Like 10 years ago, if you're like playing like a bunch of AAA video ass games, you're like, all right, cool. So just keep fast. Like last 10 years, I went from looks like absolute dog shit to looks pretty good. Next 10 years, holy shit, it's going to be photorealistic. It's going to be like real people, you know, just amazing graphics. And the reality is, of course, you give me a side-by-side with a game that came out in 2025 and one that came out in 2015, and if I squint, I might be able to see the 4K texture resolution in the new one. Like, hell, I mean, the Oblivion remaster, like, I was watching the side-by-side of that one, and there were certain moments where I was like, which one's which again? I don't know, right? And that's not because I got bad vision or anything. It's just like, you know, things just haven't changed that much. And so GTA 6, now that looks like a video fucking game that like could not have been done in previous hardware generations. Now, of course, like it cost them probably like $1 billion fucking to make it, but hey, I'm worth it. You should make more $1 billion games so that I can think that these graphics are pretty good, actually. There was one of the fastest growing videos of all time. So like clearly I'm not the only person interested. I think it's like sitting at like 115 million fucking views right now on the YouTube. So it's right up there with Breaking Change, the podcast. So check it out if you haven't. If you watch this podcast or listen to it and you don't, and you have not yet seen GTA 6, then that is in that Venn diagram, you are a polyp. So thank you. Ars Technica is reporting that Valve is taking another step forward towards making SteamOS a true Windows competitor, which is a bit of an over-the-top headline. What it's really saying is that there's a compatibility program now where works on SteamOS is going to be something that Valve publishes for video games. So when you're a video game right now and you're listed in the Steam store, like it'll say, are you Steam Deck verified? Because that's the only real hardware so far that has used SteamOS. And I've got a Steam Deck sitting right, actually, you know what? For the YouTubes, I got a fucking shit hanging off of it. I've got a Steam Deck right here. That was totally worth using this prop to say, hey, look, I've got a Steam Deck. And I play that one game on it, the one Yakuza game on it. It's going to soon have a sibling in that Asus is releasing a product. I think or was it the Lenovo Go S or something, is going to be able to run SteamOS, or is going to ship with SteamOS. So now we're dealing with like multiple SteamOS running devices. There's rumors that Valve themselves or maybe licensees are going to be releasing like essentially desktop boxes that can sit in a home console like form factor. And so you'll run SteamOS on that and be able to buy and install games. So it makes perfect sense that they, across multiple hardware profiles, they'll say like, you know, table stakes, this will run on Steam. This doesn't have any sort of like anti-cheat that will prevent it from running on Steam, or a launcher that'll require a keyboard and mouse. Like it'll kind of touch on all of those concerns. And that verification system is really all that they have left in terms of what they've got to be able to demonstrate, short of having an ISO image that you can just download and install this thing like Linux onto literally any fucking box, which maybe is the end game. So if you're frustrated with Windows, for whatever reason, Proton, which is the translation layer that Valve has built to be able to run Windows games on Linux, is really, really impressive. So I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, where Valve takes SteamOS from here. It's an important little baby step forward in figuring that out. But at the same time, looking at my Steam Deck, I wish I could play my Microsoft Game Pass games on it. And you know what? When you start talking about like what Microsoft's next Xbox looks like, there's increasing rumors and murmurings that next Xbox might be a Windows system that can play Steam shit just as well as Game Pass shit, and eschew basically the 30-70 split with the assumption that the console is going to be totally locked down. Microsoft shit the bed so badly with the Xbox One generation, and they're so far behind now, that having another lockdown console may just not be in the cards, especially one with a high entry-level price tag. At that point, it's like you're already releasing all your games on PlayStation now, so why wouldn't somebody just buy a PlayStation 7 instead, since they could theoretically at least buy all the games on that one console. So it's just funny to imagine that we could be talking about having a Steam console, basically, that can play Steam games, but not Game Pass games, or an Xbox that can play Steam games or Xbox games. And that would be the Microsoft hardware would be preferable as a result. So it really does seem like both should just open up to each other. And of course, there's a lot of steps between where we are now and there. But even as it is, a Steam Deck or a dedicated Game Pass system, either of those is far more appealing to me as somebody who likes to have a reasonably large library than either my Nintendo Switch or a theoretical Nintendo Switch 2 if I were to have one in hand, or my PS5, which has mostly just collected dust since I bought it in 2020, and maybe my biggest regret in terms of a console purchase ever. And I owned a Saturn for a while. Yeah, speaking of the Switch 2, it's coming in June. We're just a couple weeks away now. I still have this fantasy that I'm going to go to a Yodobashi camera or something, or a Bic camera, and stand in line for this motherfucker. Just to say I did, just to kind of have that collective experience of me and some other number of nerds. I don't know, if you follow the hardware at all, it's not impressive hardware. It's like a 2-hour battery life with a 20 watt hour battery means that its total TDP, including the screen and the APU and everything, can't be more than 10 watts, which is not a lot. A Steam Deck, for example, just the APU can be configured by default to run at 15 watt TDP, meaning basically how much power does it draw. And all in, there are some people who get it to go 23, 24, 25 watts of draw while being played in mobile mode. Even on top of that, the Switch APU itself is significantly less powerful in a lot of really important ways, and it's running on 8 nanometer process, a really old process. Probably just keeping some old Samsung fab open. And the thing about large processes like that 8 nanometer process is that it's less power efficient. So you're having a very power constrained device running on a very power, hungry node at 8 nanometers. The graphics look fine in what we've seen so far, and of course, software that's designed for a particular hardware spec is able to optimize much to an extent that more generic, playing a PC game on any old Tom, Dick, and Harry CPU is not going to be so tightly integrated. But this is the start of a new console generation, they're saying, and the last one was 8 years. And granted, the Switch's hardware was ancient when it came out in 2016, but this is already really, they literally, somebody leaked in China a Switch 2 circuit board, and it was printed that it had been built in 2021. And as far as we can tell, it is final fucking hardware. 2021. 4 years ago. And, what happened was Animal Crossing. And so suddenly the Switch had its best fucking year ever. And so they just kept putting it off, and then they just didn't bother upgrading the hardware because who would bother? They probably already had the contract in place with Samsung. And so now, if anything, all that's really changed is that their margins are going to be better on the Switch 2 than they otherwise would have been. Because, those components are only going to get cheaper over time. So I don't know, all this adds up and I'm just the Switch 2 doesn't seem like something that any gaming enthusiast should buy for any purpose other than playing Nintendo's exclusive games. And since the only exclusive game at launch is Mario Kart World, if you're not a Mario Kart nerd, you should probably just wait. So that's a bummer, because I love new hardware, but if even I can talk myself out of buying new hardware, then there must be some sort of problem. See, last game note, Fortnite. For all the Fortnite fans who just can't get enough Fortnite, but only on phones for some reason. Fortnite is back in the iOS App Store. It was a journey. I'm not going to recap the whole fucking, epic court case or anything, but essentially, Apple was forced to let you link out to the web finally to as the remedy for the anti-steering provisions. That is to say that if you're in the Kindle app now, there's a buy book button, and it'll take you to a website and you buy the book, and then you go back to the app and then the book is there. Still a little bit hinky, but like you can do it. Spotify, you can sign up for Spotify, right? Thing was, so like that remedy, like the court order didn't literally say you gotta let Fortnite back into the store, because like Epic broke other rules and Apple banned the account. So when they resubmitted, saying, announcing to the world, Epic was like, oh, and Apple's going to totally let us back in now, right. Apple didn't initially and didn't indicate that they were interested in doing that. But the judge basically, say, hey, we're going to remand you back to court on Tuesday if you don't fucking do this, or if you don't come to a joint resolution with the other party, which Apple probably would have taken to mean like she's going to force us to do this anyway, and so then they did it. So that's great. I don't know. Some people are calling for Tim Cook's head about this. I just don't care very much. Clearly, the one thing we did learn is that Tim Cook is not some kind of galaxy brain, right? Because this is like, nothing was won now, right? Through all of this fighting and trying to prevent the slippery slope, and if they had just won straight up and gotten away with it, then yeah, Tim Cook would look like a genius. But he kind of doesn't, and instead just got dressed down by a judge and now had to give in anyway. So like it just looks more petulant than anything. So that's egg on Tim's face, and some people say, hey, he should get out of there, and they need to go and work on their... Of course, like people who are developers in the Apple ecosystem are going to say that because they've been pretty pissed for a long time about the degree to which Apple, doesn't value them. From my perspective, Tim's going to have a lot of really hard politics to deal with for the next several years, keeping Trump happy. And if I was an Apple shareholder or a board member, I'd be like, Tim, you know what? We probably do need a leadership change. We probably do need a shot in the arm from a PR perspective. We probably do need fresh blood to think about some of these problems differently now that we're a services and hardware combined company. But you know what we don't need is to crown a new CEO as your replacement and then let Trump just absolutely tear them to shreds over the next several years and absolutely, just create a whole another nonsensical series of PR fiascos for the company that new CEO has to come, not just out the gate, like be able to deal with, but then have their personal brand associated with as well. Like now that person's going to be standing up at the State of the Union because Trump insists on it. And so like people are going to get pissed about that. And instead, what Tim Cook should probably do is keep playing ball, keep doing his thing through the end of the Trump administration, and then revisit, right? That's probably the right answer, but that's satisfying to literally nobody, right? Like the people who think he should be kicked out immediately and the people who think that like Tim did nothing wrong, like no one is satisfied by that. That's probably the right answer. And I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the second Trump administration, he's pretty ready to like take a fucking break and do something else. Yeah. All right, next up. CarPlay Ultra. The next generation CarPlay is called CarPlay Ultra. And there's a video and there's a website. I'll share a link. And Top Gear Guy did a video that is pretty cool, but only if you buy an Aston Martin, which I'm not going to do. I will say that like Aston Martin has like normal car-sized infotainment screens, and it really makes one wonder whether or not this thing's going to scale up to EVs and these like, massive 18, 20-inch tablet carputers that modern cars have. Because as somebody who's been using a Tesla regularly, it's not clear how you get from A to B. And because Apple's announced that they're working with Hyundai, Kia, Genesis, and that portfolio of Korean car makes, they've got a pretty big blend of EVs now with those big tablets. It'll be really interesting to see what happens, how Apple translates that user interface to more of the, like, instead of just, conforming their UI around the speedometer and the tachyometer and all that, to instead be like the dominant, this is really the home screen for your car. That's when that's what I think we should look for. But that's, who knows, a year and a half away. So that's been up. Another rumor about Vision OS 3 coming up, that you'll be able to scroll with your eyeballs. That's great. You do, right now you kind of point and click. Use your eyeballs as the pointer in Vision OS, so you can look at something, and then you pinch and select it. So it's already eye tracking you. And I have often felt like scrolling is a real pain in the dick when I'm using my Vision Pro. Like if I'm trying to read an article, I just like feel like I'm pulling on a thread over and over again. I don't like touching my fingers together for that purpose. I like to touch them together for other purposes. But the idea that you'd be able to scroll with just your eyeballs, some people are poo-pooing it, like, oh, how would they ever figure that out? Like, to me, it feels totally natural. The analogy in my mind is, if you've ever held a tablet and it's reading an article, and you kind of put your thumb in the middle of the of the tablet, and then you actually let the tablet physically fall, that page will scroll exactly at the same rate that the tablet is falling. Right? So you're keeping your thumb where it is, and then the tablet starts falling. Like it's like the content gets dragged up. That's kind of like, that is almost like how a teleprompter would be working, right? If the teleprompter was like a literal physical reel of, like turned on a crank, right? Of like text that had been printed, and then torn through or pulled through some sort of roller. That's kind of what I'm imagining here, is if you're reading an article, and as your eyes get towards the bottom of the article, it would just kind of keep it centered, sort of like you're always, like you're leaning forward in a segue, and it's just kind of rolling forward as you go next line to next line, so that everything stays. That way you're not just staring at the bottom of your screen, so to speak, but you're kind of just reading, and as you go down, it just kind of keeps scrolling up, kind of naturally and progressively. If that's how it works, that's awesome. And in fact, that might be a more pleasant reading experience than a lot, even on a Mac or whatever, or a computer or an iPhone, where you are still actively physically having to do anything. Because as long as the retinal sensors are configured properly and able to tell when you're reading line 38 versus 39 versus 40, it should be able to set that acceleration and that momentum, in a pleasant way. So that'd be pretty cool. I don't know. Let's see. AI search for phones. Man. Supposedly Apple is working on, as a hedge, that their Google. Yeah, here's what I don't like, right? So Google right now pays Apple about $25 billion in terms of referral fees, basically, for Google searches that are performed on account of the fact that Google is the default search engine in Safari. That deal might get shot in the head by the antitrust suit that Google lost. So Google is now considered a monopoly. One of the remedies on the table of many, including having to sell off Chrome, would be that they can no longer do this backroom deal or these exclusive agreements with companies like Apple, which means that Apple wouldn't get that $25 billion anymore. And so if Apple really believed that the best thing for their customers and the product was just Google searches, then they would, just have Google still be the default, right? And you could change it. If it's a thing where it's just the highest bidder, then they would put it out to bid, right? And they say, hey, DuckDuckGo versus Microsoft versus whatever the fuck, Ecosia. Like, if you guys want to bid on this, you can bid on it. Whoever wins, wins. Of course, they're not going to do that, though, because it would look ridiculous, right? They'd look petulant. No, I used that word already. I don't get to use petulant again. They'd look cheap, miserly, like shystery. They'd look shystery. They'd be like, all right, well, it's available for the highest bidder, and that's the search engine that everyone in the world has to use by default, right? And then force us all to go in and then change it back to Google, for example. So that's like probably not what they're going to do. But instead, this Bloomberg article about them inventing a new AI first search engine for Siri that would incorporate web search with other kind of like onboard searches. kind of doing what Perplexity does, one has to wonder, the counterfactual, like, is this a thing that Apple would only release in the universe where they're actually forced to stop taking Google's money for search? And they're doing because it would be better, but it would only be better enough to be worth it to them if that 25 billion disappeared? Or are they doing this because they think it would just legit be better and they're willing to turn it on and ship that feature, even if it means, say, like voluntarily giving up the $25 billion? Like, I'm pretty sure everyone agrees and everyone knows the answer to that question is like they would just keep taking the $25 billion as long as they could. But like once that money dries up, if they've got some better AI-based search thing, then like, oh yeah, I guess we'll just throw a dog a bone and make the product better, you know? It's another chink in the Tim Cook armor that like clearly, like it's almost on its face, the product is suffering because of this tight-fistedness of having the revenue and profit be the North Star instead of making the product better be the North Star. So that's happening. I don't know. I would love if search on iPhone was better and gooder than Google. Right now I've got DuckDuckGo, not DuckDuck, I've got Kagi as my search engine for iOS, and that works great. But I also have, like, I use ChatGPT search a ton. It would be great to have a single thing that I just type into and I got the best of both worlds immediately on iPhone, which maybe just means I should be using Perplexity, but I don't know. Next up, this is big rumor, big rumory news. Apparently iOS 19 is going to let developers use Apple's AI models, use their LLMs, just like any other LLM API, from their apps. And this is huge because right now, if you want to have an onboard local LLM as part of your iOS app, you've got to fucking ship that motherfucker. And that might be 2-3 gigabytes. And then at that point, maybe it's like, hey, after you install the app, okay, like click this button and then download the models that you need. Of course, no one wants to fucking do that, and conversions would be really shitty. And like, so instead what they do is like they all just phone home to the OpenAI APIs or the Claude APIs, and then they just pay for somebody else to run the AI model, which then means that like you can't have a all-you-can-eat subscription solution without charging a relatively high subscription fee for an app that might just be better served as like a free app or an app where you just pay once. So if Apple actually does this and lets you call their models locally and those models are decent and the API is stable, meaning that those models are getting better kind of magically as the people update iOS, like for me as somebody who wants to be developing AI assisted apps for iPhone, this is what I'm waiting for. And iOS 18, I was expecting this and it didn't come. If 19 is announced, I will be very happy. So between that and the visual refresh in iOS 19, I'm suddenly extremely excited about WWDC, which is coming up here just in, June 9th? Yeah, on the 9th is the keynote. So I'll be paying attention. You know, new visual design that's Swift UI first up and down the platform stack will probably mean it's never been a better time to start a new app. That's like, kind of like all on the modern stack of Apple software tooling. And then having a callable AI model, that you can rely on if you're targeting iOS 19 and its sibling platforms or later, like it seems like a great floor to get in on. So I'm looking forward to it. I really hope I actually shit as opposed to get off the pot. This is Apple adjacent, I guess, because Jony Ive, you know who, he and Sam and Johnny have a website up at openai.com/samandjohnny. So Sam Altman, who's got more $1 billion than cents, although he wants to have trillions of dollars available to him, he's settling for spending mere billions on acquisitions that probably won't go anywhere. Sam Altman and OpenAI have acquired IO, which is Jony Ive's startup, which had, I think, like 40 to 50 employees, a mix of designers, mostly designers, product designers who worked at Apple, as well as a handful of people who were product managers. And one presumes a smaller handful that were responsible for product engineering. As far as I know, like not very many software people. So I/O has existed for all of a year, and they have not produced anything. They may have had a couple of clients, I don't know. They've been collaborating, of course, we've heard, for about that full year with OpenAI on some kind of unannounced hardware. But you go to this website, right? They announced the I/O merger. It's a 9-minute video with Sam Altman and Jony Ive. It's a real puff piece, and it's got the music, it's got the pacing. You know, you've seen this video before, and it's a tone piece, kind of, right? Like, so, first of all, when Sam Altman is in this, and when he's on anything really, I just feel like he, in his head, he's trying to imitate Jesse Eisenberg playing Mark Zuckerberg in The Social Network. Like, it's like he's trying to be that guy, like on purpose. And if that's true, okay. If that's true, that's fine. But like, that's not the character I would choose to play in that melodrama. And I/O's, got some great people. Like, we think, we don't really know who these people are other than their reputation in Apple was supposedly pretty good. Scott Cannon is I think an iPhone product developer or product manager. Tang. I don't know how we pronounce that. Tang. If it's intonated the same way for both names, for both Tangs. Evans Hanke was head of industrial design after Jony Ive left. I don't know, man. Like, usually when people leave Apple and then they're like, we're going to go do the thing and we're going to build this integrated thing, and like, it usually doesn't go anywhere. Obviously, Jony Ive has a lot of cachet. He's a sir, right? So he's knighted. I don't anticipate that this is going to be more than the humane pin, but less awful, like more practical, like a real thing. Like, I'm all about new hardware. I'm all about, taking a totally fresh crack at what can consumer electronics be if you really lean into all this cool AI shit and you are actively willing to drop the past, right? Because obviously Apple might be, and Google might be excited about a lot of the AI shit, but they're not going to suddenly take the keyboards off the MacBooks, right? Or the touchscreens off of the smartphones. And maybe some of that stuff will ultimately be proven to be vestigial, right? So having some new line of consumer electronics that is divorced from that past, just like the iPhone didn't have the clicky keyboard at the bottom, right? Or the stylus. Like, maybe it's time for something like that, or maybe soon it will be time for something like that. And so OpenAI, better than anybody, just in terms of their size and their incumbency factor as AI leaders, it makes sense for this to be them. And, Jony Ive and the Apple people, like, it makes sense for that to be them too. Not, will anything come of it? I don't know. Like, will it be good? I don't know. Like, odds are it won't be good because most things people do aren't good. But maybe it'll be good. Well, we'll just have to see. I love that this happened during Google I/O. So like now OpenAI has kind of co-opted Google's GPT branding and also their I/O branding. And I don't think we're going to hear I/O again from them post merger, but it would be funny if they called it OpenAI.io as being their hardware division, just to kind of say fuck you to Google. I was watching this video while I was walking through Saitama, and it was buffering slowly because it seems to not be a YouTube video. And so I had time to think in between each sentence. And it was rush hour, and everyone was walking towards me because it was like, I'm staying in a hotel that's like in the corporate dystopia, and I was walking back to the station in the opposite direction. And listening to the monologue of each character in the Sam and Jony drama film, I'll be honest, not to say it was moving, but like there's a lot of things when we talk about being vestigial about like current knowledge work and life, like watching all these people, like they're in suits, they are all dressed up, they've got their laptop bag and they're marching into an office after having spent half an hour on a train to go and sit in a cubicle or in a small team setting and mostly just stare at that computer all day. Like the world doesn't make a lot of sense right now. So the prospect of big changes happening to that world, like, you know, they might be scary and they might be like low probability of success, but like it doesn't make the current world that we occupy any more justifiable or sane. And so it, you know, I'm sure some very small percentage of the people that I was walking past in this kind of concrete jungle that no one would ever otherwise be going to on purpose, like some number of them actually have real jobs where like they need to be there in person, where a Zoom wouldn't cut it, where they're not just going to look at a computer, where they've got physical stuff that they got to do. But like one imagines that they've all got pretty soft hands. Like some paper might be involved, and talking face to face is always better than Zoom and stuff. But I don't know. It was a moment for me. Anywho, yeah, you know, the only other thought I had in this video is Jony Ive is like, he's the essentialist. He's like, oh, we tore down to the bare, you know, just the aluminium and glass and the purity of the whatever the fuck. And yes, he can pontificate about that, but like when he's pontificating and when he does expand in those old videos, it was like about the product. Here, this is a 9.5 minute long video, and I swear to God, they spent like 1.5 minutes just talking about how great San Francisco is, like the topology of, you know, and like all the history and everything about SF. Like, SF is irrelevant to this announcement. Like, yes, it is part of your story that like you met there and moved there to do this IO thing, but like, unless it's a big part of the branding that like you are going to be staffing up and building an office of hardware people and you're looking to recruit them to come to SF, like, I don't know what it really does for you. Like maybe it's just that they don't have any physical hardware to show, and the only way to ground this story is to ground it in a place because people know what places are. But man, it just seemed distracted. Like I'd rather have had that minute back or had a bigger impact. 9.5 minutes is a lot to ask people to watch. So having this be a 6-minute video that's a little bit tighter might have been better. I don't know. I'm just everyone's a critic. Also not in the video, $6.5 billion fucking dollars. Like when you're watching the video, you're like, oh yeah, Johnny's gonna go work with this guy now, and he's bringing some of his friends, and they're gonna build some stuff. $6.5 billion for a year-old company with like 40 employees that hasn't shipped anything. Like what? What? Dude, I would have done it for like 30 million. I know I'm, you know, lower rent than Johnny, but fuck, $6.5 billion. Well, Jony Ive's never gonna work a day in his life again, or on, you know, going to have to. One imagines other people in the company might have had equity too, and so now you've got a whole bunch of people probably with earnouts that they don't need to earn. So I wonder what the terms of this agreement are in terms of how, you know, if it's an all stock deal or something, or like retaining these people is going to be real fucking hard if you're already talking about a denominator of $6.5 billion. Jesus Christ. So we'll see where that goes. I'm going to look through, you know, we're already at 1:54. My throat hurts. I was so young when we started this podcast episode. Quick hits. All right, I'm going to work through these quickly. 1, there's a study. It finds that ChatGPT diminishes idea diversity in brainstorming. I'll leave it at that. Of course it does, right? Something that tries to steer us towards the median is not going to be able to think of or encourage ideas that are far outside that norm, which is one reason why I still can't fucking get it to like write my kind of prose, which is, as mentioned earlier, all about subverting your expectations and throwing you off kilter? Throwing you tilt? You know what I mean. Throwing you off your game. Microsoft engineers. This quote is, I think, from the Slashdot summary. Slashdot, still a website, should be their tagline, are being forced to dig their own AI graves. And the premise of the story is, it's an information article, and information is paywalled, so I don't read it. But I read summaries of information articles, and sometimes they're interesting. You know, Microsoft employees have been told use Copilot, use code generation more, and report back on the percentage of your code that is AI generated. And we want to see that number go up. So then they do it, and then Microsoft announces another round of layoffs, and they lay off more people. And then Satya and other leaders at Microsoft go and they announce, hey, look, we're now at 35% or 45% or 50% of all code at Microsoft is written by AI. And of course, like, they're incentivized to do that because it's good marketing, right? Like they're doing Azure and they've got this ChatGPT or OpenAI partnership, and they want to be seen as leaders in AI. And given the enterprises that look to Microsoft in terms of the products that they buy, like, yes, if I was an executive at Microsoft, it would make a certain sense to encourage people internally to use these tools, and it would make a certain sense to track how much code is AI generated, because, like, on one level, it does make a certain sense that like we'd be ahead of the 8 ball because we're developing these tools, and so we're using them before other people. But as soon as you make this a metric that you tell people, like, we want this number to go up, please make this number go up, and put the fear of God in their hearts because the layoffs are also happening. Like, D.W. Deming had this quote. He said, if you give a middle manager a numeric target, he will hit it, even if he has to bring down the company to do it. And that's kind of what this feels like. It's like, yeah, if you want to just have a whole bunch of AI generated slop, where it's like, now something that could have been done in 10 lines, I find a way to do in 150 lines because 140 of those lines was generated comments by ChatGPT or Copilot. Like, I can do that, right? If I have no shame, or if I'm bad at my job, right? And I don't take any pride in my work. And so that's going to be the employee that's looking really good because, like, oh, well, look, Charlie over there's got 80% generated by AI that he got merged in. And then all you got to do is find a couple other friends who will, like, review each other's pull requests for you. It'll be like, hey, man, let's sneak in more of this shit. Right? And so you get the one person on the team who's, like, stalwart and saying, no, we got to actually, like, do good and not just commit shit to hit a number. Well, like, yeah, seems bad. One nice thing, one nice technology, there's a, I think it's a Python tool, a library that implements an idea that I had within 15 minutes of trying to use AI agents to do any real coding work. And that is called muscle-mem. So, like, if you've got a program that is essentially dispatching AI agents to do particular tasks, you'll realize really quickly, like, most tasks, like for me, it was this real estate searching thing. Like, here's an agent that has tools, and those tools include things like can look up real estate listings and do a search, can translate those into English, can enhance each of those listings by drilling into the page or following other links about them or the developer, right? Like, these different tools. And what I realized really quickly was, like, wow, I'm burning a lot of LLM API tokens on having it figure out how to route from tool A to tool B, like, every single fucking time. And also, it's really slow. So what muscle-mem does is it will recognize early and kind of break out into a cached path, like a hot path. Be like, oh, I see a query like this. Does this query sufficiently look like any other queries that we've recently dispatched? Oh, it does. And that one did tool A to tool B to tool C. So, like, let's just do that instead of calling through the LLM and doing it the slow way. And then you have some sort of cache validation happening, right? Maybe it's based on time or whatever. So muscle-mem does that for you. And that looks really goddamn cool. Like, every now and then we move one step forward in terms of capability, like that we have these agents with LangChain and stuff that you can call through and have, using that React model, so to speak, of getting an AI to do shit for you programmatically. And then we have these suitability things where it's like, yeah, but in practice that kind of fucking blows. And here, why don't we just cache this to make it actually be, like, suitably fast. Because where I wound up with my little agent program that I built was like, you know what? I don't need agents at all. Like, I don't, that this be a CLI that I can talk to doesn't really add a lot of value. I should just like use AI maybe to build a script like any other script, or a scraper like any other scraper that I normally would have built. And also maybe I don't even need the AI. Maybe I just do it. Yeah, tools like this, like libraries like this, give me a little bit of hope that, you know, we are actually working towards something and we're not just oscillating. Again, it disappoints me that so many of them are in fucking Python and TypeScript, because I don't like writing either of those things. But eventually, you know, one presumes that something like that will come to Ruby, and one hopes it won't have to be me. I'm the one. I'm hoping it won't have to be me. I'm going to share a very long real journal article on Frontiers, and I'll share the title. I'm not going to... The title is Naturalizing Relevance Realization: Why Agency and Cognition Are Fundamentally Not Computational. So if you think that we can just algorithm our way into building real brains, you are incorrect. And this, I wouldn't say proves, but like this makes a very strong argument that there is no straight line where we just keep adding GPUs and then we get to a brain. Right? And I think a lot of us intuitively believe that, but this adds a lot of formality to that that's worth checking out. So I'll share that link. A link I will also share is the Chicago Sun-Times summer reading list. And it was full of fake books. Like some large number of the books were just fake, because somebody wrote that article of, hey, here's our summer reading list, and just passed it to ChatGPT, and probably wasn't even paying for Plus, and didn't check that all the books were real. And if anyone gets pissed off about AI generating bullshit, it's authors. So yeah, authors are not happy that in an article that printed onto a paper magazine or paper newspaper, right? So like we have AI slop now actually showing up in ink and paper in the real world. Yeah, so authors are pissed. Anyway, it's just, you know, journalism is beyond fucked, and it seems like journalists are operating under such stresses that they are inadvertently or vertently accelerating their own demise. Speaking of demises, college towns are fucked because fewer people going to college. So, you know, 4-year degree granting institutions, people are realizing might not be the kind of gravy train that they used to be. Unemployment among college graduates is higher than ever. And if you read this article, it's a Wall Street Journal article. I'll share that, plus the Apple News Plus link for any of you Apple fans out there who have Apple News. If you read this article, it's not saying that college towns are going bust. It's saying that like mediocre or mid college towns are going bust. So like, you know, the Macomb, Illinois, like Western Illinois University, like they're super fucked. Like coffee shop can't stay open levels of fucked. But like other cases of like University of Illinois at Urbana, like that campus, growing. And if you read the article, you kind of see this narrative that makes a certain sense, right? Like if I want to go to college to get more money, to get a better job, at this point, learning the skills isn't the thing that I'm going to get from the college that I couldn't get from ChatGPT or something, or from an online course. Like, it's really about gated access to opportunities. And so like really top tier universities, there's still enough people hiring fresh out of college graduates that the top tier universities can saturate that demand for new hires. But as the number of employers who are looking to hire, you know, fresh outs, fresh college grads, as that number of like the overall demand for 4-year college grads shrinks, the ones who fall out first are the bottom, right? So people at community colleges, people who are at regional universities, or state schools that aren't particularly like, prestigious. You go to one of those schools, you're at the bottom of the ladder, you're going to fall right out the stack ranking of like who are the remaining employers looking to hire four-year grads going to hire. Now, like, the question that this demands us to ask is, are we seeing this and it's only going to affect mid-tier and like low-tier prestige universities? Or are we just in year 1 or 2 of this phenomenon? And 3 years from now, we're going to be talking about how even University of Michigan grads can't find a fucking job unless you go to Ivy League or something, right? Or MIT. And at that point, now, are universities just going to go back east? Like William and Mary was like a seminary. That's how these all started, right? It was like seminaries, and like only people who were like, getting ready to enter the priesthood or whatever would actually go to college. Are we getting like back to that, where it's just like this handful of tiny elite institutions, and that's the only people who really need to go to college? Of course, it won't get to that extreme, but there's a certain retrenchment happening geographically if you think about where the successful university is going to be even a few years from now. So, interesting article. One last piece of news I thought was worth sharing is Substack. Lauren Leake has a Substack that combines two concepts that seem to both be true. One, response rates to surveys continue to fall to significantly less than 5%. I think she said 5%, but like for political polls, it seems to be much, much lower than that. And two, AI bots and AI agents that are so instructed are responding to more surveys than ever, and she pegs it at 20%, but no one can really know that number. So if humans are responding to fewer surveys and robots are responding to more surveys, pretty soon we're just going to have like, I guess, an AI bot for president, like, because until we realize that we can't really trust public opinion polling or surveys very much, but we continue to make important decisions based on them. Like, anyway, she goes into just like a few basic ways in which this could introduce systemic bias into our interpretation of surveys and what they mean. In some ways, it'll pull towards the political center or in terms of customer preference and norms and expectations. But, I still keep coming back to this idea that like Apple and Google using iOS and Android could just have, like they try to do with that COVID exposure thing that didn't work. I think they could just introduce a new standard that says like public policy polling built into every device. We have your identity, we've got these passkeys, we know you are you, right? It's just like that signature certificate thing. And we could track whether you've responded to a survey or not. We could just work with a public policy firm or with a government and say, hey, you want, to know the answer to this question? Well, we will find you a simple random sample of 1,000 people, and we will keep harassing them until we get those 1,000 people to respond. So we can get you very close to the 100% response rate. And also we own the operating system. And so we're able to make things like picking out who your favorite presidential candidate is, or whatever the public policy question is, in terms of what you support and don't support. We can make that really pleasant and easy to click. Like Apple and Google could fix all of public polling in relatively little effort. That they don't do that, I think, is partly because there's nothing sexy about it, and everyone loves to shoot the messenger with this stuff. But man, it would be such a tremendous public service. So of course it won't happen. Cool. Well, that's enough news. Let's bust out the fun zone and talk about some recommendations. Well, recommendations shouldn't take too long because I have not had any time for fun. Haven't watched any TV shows, haven't watched any movies. We saw Paddington in Peru in Japanese at the theater, and that was pretty good. Seems like Becky was able to follow all of it, so maybe it was a little obvious It was pretty good. I don't know. All the Paddington movies are pretty good. Seem like high quality family films. Let's see. What else is going on? Went to a baseball game. So Miyagawa from Rebuild FM, which is like the most popular tech podcast in Japan, as far as I know. He's an old Ruby community guy. We had him out for a baseball game. We went to the Yakult Swallows at Jingu Stadium, which is over in Harajuku near Meiji Jingu. Meiji Jingu. Saying it that way backwards sounded weird. Anyway, Meiji Shrine. They've got a really cool stadium. It's like nice and outdoorsy. Yeah, so had fun at the Yakult Swallows game. Japanese baseball, I recommend it. Paddington in Peru, I recommend it. There's this dance troupe in Japan that's been on hiatus for 5 years or so since COVID, called World Order, and it's like a pop and lock thing where they do synchronized dancing in public, and the conceit is that the dudes all wear like suits, stretchy suits, but suits, and they do really clever editing to make it look like they're popping between different places. And they did a new video called Samurai, and I was like, oh, finally a new video after 5 years. This is fucking great. And I started sharing with a few people, including Miyagawa sensei. I say sensei because he's my pop culture teacher. So I sent to Miyagawa-san, and he replied immediately, yeah, it's just too bad that he like went off the deep end with like the anti-vax conspiracy theorist stuff and tried running for a local office and was in hot water about it and stuff. I was like, oh, motherfucker. Like, it's time to milkshake duck is so fast now, where it's like as soon as like I see anything, it's like, oh wow, this is really neat. It's like, oh, it turns out that they're actually secretly a Nazi and we all just found out. That's a bit of a bummer. Nomad is a consumer goods accessory company, kind of like 12 South, I guess, if you're familiar with them. Let's see. I got a cable from them, a very fancy universal cable. It's USB-C to USB-C, but it has like a little nubbin, has like a little like Apple Watch charger on the end. And what I thought I was going to get was a lightweight cable that I could take and travel with, and then that way eliminate one more cable from what I'm looking at here, which is like 5 fucking cables flying around. And I was like, this will save me time and space in my bag. And the cable came, and it's like 2 meters long. It's really long, I think. And it was very heavy. And the little watch piece in particular is like way heavier than Apple's own watch charger, even though it looks identical. And between being so big and so heavy, I was like, this is actually like heavier and bigger than the 2 cables I was taking previously. So I'm going to return it. But their return people have been fantastic. Like, even though I'll be outside the 30 days because I can't send it back, even though it's back at home because I'm not there to send it back. They're going to extend the return window for me, which is lovely. So shout out to Nomad and the cable that I don't like that they had just made. So thank you. Let's see, recommendations. A new theme park called Junglia is opening in Okinawa in July. And if you watch the trailer earnestly and believe that it is what it seems to show, it's going to be the best theme park in the history of theme parks. And has dinosaurs and stuff. Of course, there's a lot of CG going on, and it seems like mostly total bullshit. But I'm very excited to see what this ends up being, because I haven't seen that kind of false advertising so just over the top in a long time. And it's a hilarious little trailer. And if they end up delivering, then I guess we'll all be going to Okinawa, because it'll be the coolest fucking theme park ever. Very Jurassic Park vibes. Yeah, let's call it. That's all my recommendations. I don't recommend you do anything else. I don't have any. How about you recommend something to me and you email me, podcast@searls.co, and you recommend some content or ideas or things or places or whatever. anything you like at all, just email me. Please. I'm so lonely. All right. Speaking of those emails, let's check out the mailbag.
You've got mail.
Justin writes in, Justin, who is not me, but rather a different Justin. I'm a relatively new listener. Version 30 was my first episode. Nice. Thanks, Justin. From Justin. I was familiar with your guest appearances on the Changelog and found your podcast. It has become a regular in my podcast rotation, and I get excited when I see a new episode is released. Me too, as previously discussed. My question, do you think Apple software has gotten worse? I returned to Apple products because I found the Android experience buggy. Around Pixel 2 timeframe was when I swapped. And the Apple experience felt better, but recently I've experienced extremely frustrating bugs on almost every Apple product I own. I wanted to see your thoughts on Apple software over time, and if you felt like the failure of Apple Intelligence is the most clear example of a slow degradation of Apple software. Maybe they need to take a step back and simplify the software stack. Best of luck with condo purchase in Japan. Can't imagine doing it over a different culture. Yep. All right, Justin, thanks for writing in. I appreciate it, and thanks for listening. Has Apple software gotten worse? I think that in a lot of ways, Apple software is better than ever. All of the operating systems update in lockstep with one another. They do it on time. It used to be the case that the first beta update for any of these operating systems would very possibly fuck up all of your data. Very possibly fuck up your data in the cloud, and then that's way harder to unfuck up. That doesn't really seem to happen anymore, partly because of better policies, procedures, and sort of developer hygiene, so to speak, and partly because they continue to refresh and rebuild the foundation on which all of their frameworks are built. And so those become more rugged over time and durable. And so they've got a durable solution to syncing data and so forth that doesn't have to get reinvented every 2 minutes. Whereas we did indeed have to pay the price once or twice to have Apple Notes go from a, roughshod syncing solution to the proper iCloud syncing solution that is built to last, right? So in that one sense, I think indeed Apple's stuff has gotten to be better over time and not worse. Another way that they've gotten better is that they used to do no automated testing, and now they do more than no automated testing, and that's an improvement. One way that you could see them as getting worse is that they are writing bigger checks than they can necessarily cash. And that's on 2 dimensions. One dimension is just usage. So the number of ways that you can use quote unquote a constellation of Apple products as an individual is this combinatorial explosion that wasn't true 20 years ago. 20 years ago when I got my first Mac, 2004, I had an iBook. There was no such thing as continuity. That iBook could interface with the iBook, the internet, maybe an iSight camera if I plunked one of the big old fucking cameras on the top. You could plug an iPod into it and sync the iPod. But it didn't have to worry about if I'm on a Wi-Fi at a house and the person's got a watch, that watch can unlock the phone or also authorize things in the settings if that's configured. I've got the Touch ID thing as well, but I've also got an iPad over here, which if it comes near the MacBook, that can act as a sidecar screen, as an additional display. But if the iPad is then put onto a different Wi-Fi network or an access point for some reason, that display needs to keep working, but maybe it will, but maybe it won't. And then if the person says the S word, maybe the HomePods go off. And if the audio, which could be playing over the AirPlay 2 protocol of the music app in the Mac, is currently going to those HomePods, but then the voice assistant goes off on the HomePods, I wonder if there's some kind of backflow problem. And that's just a handful of the products. Those are the first ones that came to my head in terms of like what could be interfacing with a Mac at any given moment. Like, and that's like, now add to that, like maybe you're in a hotel Wi-Fi or, you know, a hostile network sort of thing. Or what if one of those things is on a VPN? And like continuity, I think, is one vector by which it is, like forget about the fact that like, forget local area network, like how much of this is syncing over the cloud versus like the peer-to-peer Wi-Fi solution that they've sort of built versus MDNS, aka Bonjour over a network, or some combination of all of these things to try to be as fast as possible, or like the Bluetooth sync that happens over, to unlock a MacBook or a Mac from your watch uses Bluetooth, and it uses time of flight analysis to like make sure that like the watch is sufficiently close to the Mac to be able to have a strong enough signal to be confident that there's not a man-in-the-middle attack happening. All of these things, like when I say like writing checks that are bigger than Apple can necessarily cash, there's no amount of testing on the planet that can actually make sure that every single one of those permutations in combination won't cause some kind of problem. And now forget we've got all these different routers in the world, and some of them just don't do a good job of multicasting MDNS, right, or Bonjour requests. Or some of them are going to have radios on them that maybe they use a backhaul for the radio for this mesh network that they've got. And that backhaul radio is like on a proprietary channel that just happens to fuck with the peer-to-peer Wi-Fi that you need in place in order to use Mac Virtual Display from a Mac to a Vision Pro. Oops. What are you going to do? You're going to call support. And you're going to say, this isn't working and that's not working. And what's support going to do? They're going to be like, well, did you try resetting them both? You could reset network settings. You try like restoring the firmware, and like when that doesn't fix it, right? You're like, well, I guess Apple's quality is just low. It's like, well, no, because it turns out if you drove both those things to a different house on a different network that had a different router or something, maybe that like the problem would go away. But like you live where you live and you've got the router, and at no point are you thinking that like the one product in your house that isn't made by Apple is actually incidentally at fault for why it doesn't all work, right? So like that is the nature of the game when Apple has 15 different fucking products, and their marketing promise to you is that they all work together seamlessly all the time. It's just not possible. Like things will go wrong. And the more products you have and the more ways you use them in creative ways and in aggregate with each other, like as you have your AirPods switching between your watch and your phone and you know what I mean? Like, so it's usually in the air gap between the devices that shit goes sideways in my experience. If I'm just using one of their devices in isolation, it tends to work pretty well. The other way in which the marketing gets out over their skis is a recent tendency to announce future products or lean a little bit too hard into pitching functionality that's not really there. And Apple Intelligence, of course, is the best example and the worst example of this. And I think that they're going to be very cautious about pre-announcing stuff, or really tooting their own horn too much in terms of like, bloviating about how like revolutionary a particular software feature is, unless they're confident it's actually going to work for most people most of the time. So for me, how did Craig Federighi respond after iOS 13.0 shat the fucking bed? Every beta for iOS 13 was goddamned awful. Like it was buggy, didn't work very well. 13.0 comes out. Phones don't even work on it. They need like a 13.01 or 13.02 update on day one to even like function. I think maybe they shipped with it, right? So like most people didn't even actually experience 13.0. The iPad that was supposed to come out, that was announced, I think, coincident, that ended up shipping with 13.1 because it couldn't even be made to work. Like it was just that particular OS came in so hot, and it cascaded through all the other platforms. That was the year where Craig Federighi and his lieutenants put their foot down. And they were like, we're going to get to a proper cadence of delivery, and the way we're going to do that is have these milestones, and we're going to let features slip. We're just going to let them slip, because like what we're not going to give up on is like the basic functional soundness of our platforms. right? So that was like a kind of come to Jesus moment. And that's why public beta 1, I'm not going to be afraid to install it on any of my devices, right? They will ship the operating system. It will continue to work. It won't be a huge step backwards. The recent Mac updates are pretty perfunctory, right? It's not just because there aren't a lot of new Mac features. It's because they're not willing to go 3 steps backward to go 1 step forward so you can have like one new shiny feature. Like table stakes now are higher and the expectations are higher, and they've raised the floor on what they consider to be shippable in terms of quality. Now, it's not where I'd want it to be, and if I worked inside Apple, I'd be pushing for them to go higher, but like it's definitely better than it was, and iOS 13 was that wake-up call. I think Apple Intelligence is going to be a similar wake-up call for how Apple approaches software in the future, and I think that can only be a good thing. So for what it's worth, yes, Apple software has gotten worse in a couple different dimensions. Some are just outside the control of anyone because like we've all got too many devices and too many kind of hostile ecosystems for them to test. And some of them in the sense that like marketing has been able to run roughshod over the rest of the organization for too long, you know, and it was one thing when Steve Jobs was doing it and he had the, you know, benevolent dictator for life button where he could just run over everyone until he forced his will on them. But marketing doesn't work that way anymore. And so like the best they can do is complain to Uncle Tim and then have Tim try to push on the AI guy to make Siri go faster, right? Like that's just not functionally how the organization's wired to run anymore. And so, you know, I think that the Apple Intelligence thing is going to quiet the marketing people to maybe spend more time trying to find ways to sing the praises of the world as it is and get away from this idea that they are going to actually wish cast themselves into a vision of the future and then hope software just catches up to it. Because that's just not how any of this works. Justin, thanks for writing in. Brian writes in, send me this link for hireworkforce.ai. He says, I hope you have a mailbag in time for this hero video to be covered. Who thought that video would be so enticing? Yeah, go to this URL, hireworkforce.ai. I'll put it in the show notes. And you have to go on a desktop because like the interstitials that pop up on mobile are like so obscuring that I wasn't actually able to get the video. If you can get this video to expand and play and watch this man and 8 people who are apparently AI video versions of himself in different roles in a Zoom call, and you can see just how self-satisfied this smug guy is about this product. Just watch it. It's so cringy. It's so bad. If this is the world that we're building, we are super fucked. Andrew writes in, hi Andrew. Longtime listener, first time caller. I've gone through the back catalog because I'm constitutionally incapable of hearing version 36 without knowing what came in the 35 versions before it. Or because I want to hear your brilliant takes. Wow. Again, you want to be read on this show. Write in and compliment me. Or because I want to hear your brilliant takes in every single episode. Am I including a compliment to increase my odds of getting read on the show? Ba-boom! Yeah. Who can say? Anyway, during the pun section, you downranked the Joy-Con pun on the grounds that Becky doesn't know what a Joy-Con is. Aside, I agree with this reasoning. Saying that it doesn't pass the Becky test, and because of the particular way in which my brain is broken, I immediately thought of the Bechdel test. That is to say, the Bechdel test being a journalist, somebody named Bechdel. I'm sorry, it's long enough now, I kind of forget the details. But the idea being like, if a movie doesn't have a single scene where 2 women are talking to each other about something other than a man, it fails the Bechdel test. And you'd think that would be like a really, really low bar, except a surprising number of films at the time failed the Bechdel test. And it became enough of a meme now that like when scripts are reviewed, one really hopes that they're still checking to make sure that they've got at least 2 women talking between themselves about something other than what a man is doing. Fuck's sake. So instead of the Bechdel test, I've got the Becky test. That's like almost a pun, and maybe you could coin the phrase and become the feminist thought leader in the world of puns. More sincerely, this show is great. Keep it up. Sorry to subject you to 3 paragraphs of derangement. Well, thank you, Andrew. And just like one of Aaron's best puns, we have now collectively subjected all of the listeners to 3 paragraphs of your derangement. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Prem writes in another 3-paragrapher. We'll do this and then we'll call it. Prem. I share the same sentiment re the tourist spots in Tokyo. I used to really enjoy hanging out in Akiba, that is Akihabara. It's like the electronics area in Tokyo. Browsing the stores and walking around the streets, but now I got fed up and started buying things online instead. The roads are just full of tourists and quote-unquote guides who are blocking the sidewalk, gathering people to move from place to place. I'm happy that the tourists do drive up the sales of stuff in Japan because Japanese buying power is pretty low right now, but damn, they are annoying. I recently had an opportunity to go to the suburb, I don't generally travel, after Ruby Kaigi, and I really understand what you said. There are so many unexplored and not well-known places in Japan that aren't on those Western social media sites, and those places are lovely. After driving around and stopping by a few places, I was really telling myself I should get better at Japanese and probably move out. Well, if the suburbs still have the internet, of course, I can work. Maybe Starlink or something. Aside, before I read paragraph 3, Prem, pretty much Japan has nationwide fiber coverage. For less than $100 a month, you can get symmetric gig internet service. Basically anywhere, including up in the fucking mountains. Like I've stayed in Airbnbs that like don't have, that don't have really any services. Like I stayed in an Airbnb once, like a cottage that didn't have like garbage service that like, wasn't even on the fucking map, but they had power and they had fiber internet. They literally had gas tanks on site to be able to run their bath, and they had fiber. Like, you're gonna have internet no matter where you are in this country in practice. Okay, back to your email. Paragraph 3 reads, anyway, I hope that your condo purchase trip goes well or went well. We're going. I was actually had a small thought in my mind that maybe you couldn't stand something in Japan, and that's why you moved back to the States. Prem is aware that in 2020, Becky and I lived here for a year. And no, we went back because it was always going to be a 1-year term thing. Looking forward to hearing you tell the story about the purchase in the future episodes. All right, man. Well, thanks. Thanks for writing in. Hope you're doing well. And I would say in general, Japan is a big fucking country. Like there's 35 odd million people in it. Granted, that's in a tighter geography than America's 350 million are all spread out in. But, 35, 40 million live, yes, in the Tokyo metro region. And yes, that makes it the most populous region in the world of any metro. But like, that's still not half. It's a lot of fucking people all over this country manage to live and work and enjoy their lives all over the place. And so that's one reason why I was sharing that blog post about how many prefectures I've been to. And if anyone's interested in going to a place that's off the beaten path and they want to write in and tell me a little bit about themselves and like what they're into, I'm always happy to help people get a lot out of a Japan trip by tailoring it to like your interests and getting out of just the traditional tourism corridor of Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto. All right. On that note, I got places to be. It's been a few hours, and I really, really need to drink some water because like my throat is dying, and potentially like maybe get a workout in, and just reckon with the fact that like I spent the better part of like a day just making this gigantic mess so that I could have a little fake studio. Now I'm terrified. Like if I hit stop recording, will this recording even work? Like I guess if you're listening to this, it did. And if that's the case, and if this sounds not totally garbage, maybe I'll cut another one of these before I go back home. Who knows? Not me. Okay. Let's be done now.